Hey guys, this is just a little quick word before the actual podcast starts. I'm sad to say that this one also has the same audio problem that the previous one had. Myself and Necro are obviously doing our best to fix it, and we are both fairly sure that the next episode will not have this problem. But other than that, without further ado, here's the show. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. My name is Teeironor, and I'm joined once again by the very host of on this channel of Lore Facts, Necroxis. Say hello.
Hello! Hi, I am here.
For those who are only subscribed to my channel, Necroxis and I are former co-hosts of a different lore podcast who have gone together, and we've done a show in the past. You can watch it on Necro's channel. I'll put a link in the description below. And this is the second episode. So yeah, all fun and good stuff.
Indeed, yes. Infrequent, I guess, podcast that we do whenever we feel like talking about stuff.
Yeah, the next one might be next year, might be tomorrow. We don't know.
Right.
So what has happened since our last podcast? 6.2 has come out.
Indeed. The supposed final raid of this expansion.
Uh, you mentioned this on Twitter, and I completely agree with you. It really does seem like Warlords of Draenor was changed halfway through.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was Corey Stockton almost all but actually admitted it. Or maybe it was Ian Hazzikostas. He was like, hey, we were making 6.2 and we decided, yeah, let's change it to Gul'dan, so we went with it. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's also controversial because we paid more money for this expansion, but for less content.
Yep.
And I'm not necessarily a fan of dragging things out just for the sake of dragging things out, but there was tons of stuff left in Draenor to explore to possibly fill the gap between the start and the final raid boss, which would hypothetically be Archimonde. God, there's Farallon. There's that continent where the ogres come from. There's all sorts of stuff.
Well, I've always been really consistent on this point. I don't like this expansion, and I want to get through it as fast as possible. So while I understand people being like, hey, there's not a lot of content, I'm kind of like, yeah, we're done almost.
Well, my main thing is that it also sets a kind of dangerous precedent for future
Right.
expansions, which God, I forgot my idea. But didn't you hear a little something about the next expansion, or was that a little?
Um, I think it's fake, but after I saw leaks of Warlords, and I was like, that they could never do that. They're never going to do that. I don't know what to believe anymore. Like, I guess the expansion concept that I saw people talking about was like, it's called like Army of the Light, and we're going to like alternate Azeroth, even though they flat out said we wouldn't go to there. But whatever. And it's basically like it's Gul'dan escaped to the alternate Azeroth, and somehow he's hacking it, and we have to go save it. I don't. There wasn't a reason given why. It was just like we got to do it.
Right, right.
And so it was something like the zones were like Swamp of Sorrows and Elwyn Forest, and basically like lining up with the movie, which is why I think a lot of people believe it. I think it sounds really stupid, but like I said, at this point, who knows?
No, I think the Warlords of Draenor itself was made pretty much to be a prequel for the movie, even though it's not really a prequel. A tie-in, so to say.
Right.
And it really, I'm bashing Warlords of Draenor again, but it really does feel like they said that they expanded their development team by like 50%. It feels like all the original devs went to work on the movie, and the new 50% started to work on Warlords of Draenor.
Well, I think I've been giving them a pass on that claim until the next expansion. I have to see how big or small it is before I will say, because that was that excuse. That was their excuse, right? Why it was taking so long for Warlords to come
Mm.
out. So I really need to see if the next expansion comes out quicker and is larger. Otherwise, if it's not, that all was just a bunch of bullcrap and just I think a lie in my opinion. But I guess we'll have to see the next expansion.
Well, I imagine that we will have at least some announcement being made about Warcraft at BlizzCon.
Oh yeah, they pretty much have to at this point because otherwise there's going to be more than a year of uh, Hellfire Citadel.
Uh, so should we talk about our impressions of 6.2 or about the civilization thing?
It's up to you. Which would you like to do first?
Well, I guess we should talk about 6.2 since it's a bit more topical, and the other thing is just a little more self-indulgence on my part.
Okay, sounds good.
So, how have you been liking 6.2 so far?
I think it's a good patch. I think Tanan Jungle is fun to a degree. I didn't really like the Timeless Isle because even though there was quote a lot of things to do, a lot of it was kind of like irrelevant treasure hunting, which I don't find fun.
Right.
But I thought the Garrison campaign story was good. I really like how most of it was either direct foreshadowing of raid bosses in the raid or a callback to old storylines and past expansions. Like the finale is basically the Cipher of Damnation quest from Burning Crusade, which was cool. It was really good. It was really well done, and I liked it.
Right, right. I'm guilty of not having done the Cipher of Damnation quest in Burning Crusade.
Well, a little short rundown is uh, basically the Cipher of Damnation is a spell that Gul'dan used to raise the mountain in the middle of Shadowmoon Valley, the Hand of Gul'dan. And in BC, what's going on is Illidan has the cipher, but he hasn't used it for anything nefarious. He split it up into three parts to like protect it, which once again seems to confirm that Illidan was not a bad guy in Burning Crusade, because he could have just used it to kill everybody. But anyway, you're trying to like take it from him, even though he hasn't been using it. So you go around like collecting three pieces, and you have to summon like the Outlands version of their Fire Lord. His name is like Siruk or something like that, and you have to kill him because he's making all the elementals go crazy. So that's how that quest chain ends. And in 6.2, you fight Siruk as Gul'dan summons him while he's messing with the cipher.
That's interesting. I do remember reading on Wowpedia while I don't know if it was while I was doing research for my lore facts or way before that, but reading about the Arakkoa summoning the old god on Draenor, the Arakkoa coming to assist the Draenei, and then Gul'dan summoning the volcano right in their midst. Is it related to that?
In the actual cipher quest and in the story of Gul'dan raising the mountain, I don't think the Arakkoa are involved. That's kind of like a separate thing going on in the zone, and they weren't. If I'm recalling right, they weren't helping him. As this, he killed them, and then like their spirits were like forced to.
No, I'm not saying they helped him. I'm saying they were going to help the Draenei, and
Oh,
Gul'dan summoned the mountain and routed the Arakkoa army, so to say.
I don't recall what the Arakkoa were actually doing. I just know that they died.
Well, I always find that little bit of story in old Shadowmoon Valley to be interesting because all gods not on Azeroth and the Arakkoa were somehow involved. That was back in the day when we knew really not that much about the Arakkoa.
Or the old gods, really.
Yeah. Um, my impression of 6.2 was that yes, Tanan is a fun zone. It's more fun than the grinds in the old Apex's grinds, in my honest opinion. Um, I have done the Draenor Pathfinder thing, and I'm all right with how the reputation grind was going, but I don't know. 6.2 was really one of the buggiest patches I think I've ever seen, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, there are still moments actually right now on live where like if I fall into this water at this specific place, I'll get stuck and get disconnected over and over and over again, which they still haven't fixed.
Well, my main gripe was I would do the bonus objective, and they just wouldn't complete, and I would have wasted time doing the bonus objective. That was one of the main bugs that I encountered, as well as one annoying bug. Because I play with background music and background sounds on, the garrison music keeps repeating on when I'm in my garrison. It's the same little tone over and over again, which force me to use the music box.
Oh, I didn't. I play with. I don't play with the music on because my music is messed up. Sometimes it just does not play like at all. So I'm just like, all right. But yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't heard that bug complaint before.
Mm. In my honest opinion, music is my favorite part of the whole World of Warcraft.
Yeah, the music's very good. I wish mine worked.
Uh, but on to, I'm sure, what is one of your main complaints about 6.2 gameplay wise, the shipyard.
Yeah, the shipyard is a terrible mechanic. I hate it. I think it's one of the worst mechanics they've added into the game. They're like, hey, let's take the monotony of the garrison missions and make it so that if you fail, you can lose your ships. Which is, there was no reason for them to do that other than to force you to re-level ships over and over and over again and waste more time, in my opinion.
To be fair, in my honest opinion, I think it's a better system than the follower missions. In my honest opinion, because there's fewer missions with the shipyard. You can be a bit more selective. You can rename your ship. You can rename your ships, and the rewards are also greater. Although the mission durations are also a lot greater as well.
Yeah, I think I'm fine, and I'm glad that they made it so you didn't have to check in multiple times a day. The fact that ships can get destroyed really sours the whole thing for me, and I don't like that idea.
To be fair, you did have a lot of bad RNG.
Yeah, but even I know it's true, but even so, I can't, especially tying the legendary ring to it, where you have to do it if you want to get the ring. I'm not a fan of that.
Hmm. Well, for example, I only ever lost one ship on one mission, and it was only a green, so I didn't really worry about it that much. So
Mm.
that's why perhaps part of the reason why I might appreciate the shipyard more than you.
Right. Well, I guess my issue would be once again the legendary ring, and you didn't have to, like the legendary stuff before this wasn't tied to the garrison. You could get
Hmm.
like things from the legendary quest with the garrison missions, but that wasn't the only way you could do it. In fact, that was the slowest way you could do it.
Right. But I don't think you can gear up from shipyard missions. At most, they give Apexis crystals, or they give that those little armor tokens that you can find in Tanan or buy in Tanan. Which,
Right.
since naval missions last so long, I don't really see the point of just uh, Facebook gaming the whole game.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, the easiest way to level or to gear up is just do the dailies in Tanan and get a buttload of crystals and just buy stuff.
Yeah. Uh, and you might call me a Raph baby for that, but I do enjoy the you paying crystals for gear part, for good gear, that is. It
Oh,
just
I was never against that idea. I know a lot of people who've played as long as I have who hate it. And I'm just like, whatever. I don't. It's catch up gear, so I don't care.
well, there is also that one you can buy, and that one thing you can buy for 20,000 Apexis crystals that allows
Right.
you to upgrade your armor to that one ridiculous item level.
695. But I have been noticing that for like the really important items that I still haven't upgraded, like trinket and stuff, all you get is like pure stats, and a lot of the better trinkets are like a bit like effects that you get that I don't think those Apexis trinkets will ever roll. You'll never get like a chance to increase your critical strike by X% for 20 seconds or something. It's usually just like a bunch of intellect and a bunch of mastery or something like that.
Well, sometimes I've gotten the tertiary minor effects like leech or slightly
Right.
increased movement speed and such. Which, to be honest, leech is really nice if you're running old dungeons because you do a buttload of damage and you heal up pretty much everything. But otherwise, leech is kind of a little extra. It's tertiary.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the weaker stats. Like, I only have a very little bit, and I can definitely notice it when I'm doing old stuff. So it's nice in that regard.
Yeah, and doing old stuff is also my favorite way to gather gold. Especially a little trade secret: do Trial of the Grand Crusader, the heroic Trial of the Crusader thing, because if you beat the bosses in one try, they give you something that sells for like 100 gold or something like that.
Yep, I've been doing that for like the last month, and it's a nice way to earn some cheap, easy gold.
Have you tried doing the raid Hellfire Citadel?
I haven't done it on any actual difficulty, although I have done it on LFR.
I haven't actually done it either. Mostly because I was basically a hardcore raider in Wrath, and after I sort of quit the game in Wrath because real life issues, I stopped raiding almost entirely, and now most of my gear is from quests and badges and stuff like that. The only real raids I've done in Warlords of Draenor are LFR for the legendary quest chain because I want to see the story, and I'm currently at the Blackrock Foundry part of the quest chain, so I haven't really felt a need to do Hellfire Citadel.
Yeah, I actually rated 6.0 seriously with my guild, and then Blizzard banned like 100,000 people, and our guild leader and our best healer was using like a bot to do his garrison stuff. And when after he got banned, it all just fell apart. So I'm not raiding with anyone right now because he was smart.
Uh, but right, Hellfire Citadel. So you said you've done it on LFR. Do you have any impressions of it?
Um, the fights are fun. There seem to be a lot of fights that have just constant streams of ads, which are my least favorite kind of boss fights. Like the very first fight is just constant streams of ads while you're collecting these like cannon ammunition to blow open the gates to get in, and that's the whole fight. And then Kilrog's fight is just constant streams of ads while you're trying to slowly kill Kilrog. I don't like fights like that, and there seem to be quite a lot of those. Even Archimonde's kind of like that to a degree.
To be fair, it does make sense considering it's Hellfire Citadel.
Yeah, that's true. Especially for Archimonde, where Gul'dan's the one that's like summoning ads the whole time.
Ah, interesting. Uh, but on to the big caveat of the thing. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but the ending.
Oh yes. How did you feel about the ending?
It, in my honest opinion, it illustrates. It's a perfect illustration of the fact that Warlords of Draenor was changed halfway through because it's a very sort of standard ending of, and they all lived happily ever after, and with no real implication outside of setting up the sequel and Khadgar being Khadgar.
I yes. I don't know why he just flew away. Where was he going? He just like I have to return to my people. Goodbye. I was like, "Oh, okay, Khadgar. Bye."
I would definitely like if Khadgar was somehow being influenced by Medivh because he's starting to behave sort of like him in kind of arbitrary ways, but I know that's not going to happen, at least not in a good way.
Yeah, I've seen other people saying that too, and that would be interesting. Although that would mean we'd be going to alternate Azeroth, I think, and I don't like that. I just don't like the I none of this seems to matter to me. I just want to go back to our universe where it seems like there are consequences beyond the story forcefully trying to pretend there are consequences. Like I get it, Gul'dan's like I gotta get to Azeroth, and even that's really forced. It's like if the Legion is like, and then this gets into the whole debate of the Legion only being one that exists across all universes. If they're so like smart, like why do they care that much about our Azeroth? I guess because they got beaten a couple times, but so what? Like, they could just annihilate billions and billions of other universes. Like, what's... It seems very forced that they're like, we have to get back to this one to kill them all. I was like, oh, okay.
I still don't understand the whole Legion spans all the universes thing. Uh, I mean, I know we don't know that much about the Twisting Nether, and the Twisting Nether is mysterious and twists both time and space. But I didn't think they twisted time to sort of jump into different dimensions and merge them together, while also merging all the other dimensions together, but only for for demons and not for actual mortals. But then, y-
Have fun in that fishbowl, going round and round and round and around.
and the whole and Archimonde. I haven't done any research at all on the Archimonde fight because I haven't even read like the quotes he says during while fighting. I only saw the ending cinematic, so I don't know if he says stuff like, "Oh, I remember Hydro. You people were in Hydro. I'm gonna burn you like I burned Hydro." So I don't know if he sort of makes it obvious that he knows our universe, or if he's just, oh, it's an Archimonde.
I don't think he does, which is why it's funny, because that's when people learned about the... People were asking about... Because the raid, or what's it called? The dungeon manual description of him suggests it is the Archimonde from our universe. But he doesn't make any reference to that, so people were like, what's going on? And that's when they were like, hey, it's across all universes or some shit, I don't know.
Well, I definitely cannot wait for the Warcraft Chronicle because they promised they would talk about demons in the Twisting Nether.
Yeah, that's true. I'm looking at the quotes now. I don't really see him saying anything that would say... Like, he even says, like, your meager forces will be the first of many to be consumed by the Burning Legion, which sounds weird, because wouldn't he be like, hey, remember when you killed me? I'm really pissed off about that. I'm gonna kill you now. Like, he doesn't make any mention of it, and I don't get it.
Yeah, and I can also sort of accept the idea that very powerful demons such as Archimonde or Sargeras or people like that wouldn't permanently die while they were on a planet. So I can accept the idea that Archimonde's spirit survived past Hydro, even though it does undermine the sacrifice the Nidos had to make
Yes.
and the Warcraft 3 storyline. I can accept that because we don't know everything about demons, and a demon as powerful as Archimonde is bound to have caveats about him. But time and space, I'm confused.
Well, here's my, like, I'm fine if you, like, somehow cut off Archimonde's head and he's alive, but the way in which Malfurion kills him, they made it seem like this is a very permanent thing he's doing. Hygel, the tree burned down to its not its roots, but it's like all of the leaves and shit burned off, and they sacrificed their immortality. It seemed like a very final way to kill an Archimonde, where in the raid you just fight him and kill him with no special powers, and which also brings up the really big disconnect of having to use the very power of like Azeroth's core to destroy him, and then these random 25 people with Yrel and Durotan and Grom can just kill him with no like fanfare. He just dies. It's like, oh, all right.
Hey man, we killed all gods. Don't underestimate us.
Yeah, but at least their excuses, they're not fully awakened and they're still kind of imprisoned. And even after we killed them, they're still alive. Like the terrible comic showed, Cthulhu was still very much active and doing things even after he died, if you want to say it like that.
I always interpreted that as being he is dead, but his corpse still carries a lot of residual energy.
They need to, I don't know, if this all just feels like to me, like they're trying desperately to hold on to villains that they've made like 20 years ago. Instead of just, oh, Archimonde's dead, just, he's dead, make other things. Like, that's a big reason why I like Mists of Pandaria so much and like the Shah, because it's an entirely new thing. They didn't try to be like, and the Shah revived Illidan, and we're fighting Illidan again, guys. Haha.
Um, I definitely forgot what I was going to say. I'm really sorry. I'm really scatterbrained right now.
No, it's fine.
It's past midnight. Give me.
Dang, no worries.
Um.
So what do you like? What do you think about? Because I didn't understand Archimonde. Like, you made a pact, Gul'dan, and then Gul'dan was like, no. Like, he definitely says no and acts like he's getting screwed over at the end there. And is that supposed to be like reminiscent of what happened to Ner'zhul? Like, he gets like fucked over by Kil'jaeden? Like, I don't understand what they were going for with that. Like, what did you think about that?
I honestly think that it's part of the fact that uh, Kil'jaeden is the more cunning one and Archimonde is the more brutish one. Because contrasting Ner'zhul to Gul'dan, Ner'zhul actually broke the deal he had with
Yeah.
Kil'jaeden. He sought to undermine him. He sought to uh, empower himself at the expense of Kil'jaeden, while Gul'dan was always loyal to the Legion, even if he failed. And I think it was. I don't remember where it said this exactly, but I remember it being said that Kil'jaeden sort of always gives his subordinates who show potential a second chance, while Archimonde is always the more "you failed, now I'm gonna crush your skull" one.
That's true, and I think it's funny because you're like completely right, but I also find it funny because I've heard other people say it too, like Gul'dan failed him. My question is, did he really? Like, he summoned him to Draenor. Archimonde's the one that like failed in what he was trying to do. Gul'dan's sitting there the whole time trying to open the portal, and he's summoning through demons. Like, I don't know what else Gul'dan could have done. It was just more that they got defeated, and furthermore, even if he was getting like killed, since he's wouldn't he still want like the Legion to eventually complete what they're trying to do? Like, why would he just be like, "Fuck it, Gul'dan, if I'm dying, you're dying too," and then blows him up? It seemed really weird because obviously Gul'dan's not dead. We didn't see him explode. We didn't see his body, and his like staff disintegrated, and Khadgar was all like, "Oh no, he could be back" or whatever.
Yeah, that's also one of the things I was going to point out, that Archimonde didn't exactly kill Gul'dan. I imagine he like uh, I'm not sure if mutilate is the right word, but maybe mutilated him or sort of twisted him in a way that would make him more sort of powerful, but also more subservient. I don't know. Archimonde is stupid.
I've seen some people suggesting that he was like trying to transfer his soul into Gul'dan before he like as he was dying, and I don't know. Like, I just don't know. Like, even if he didn't kill Gul'dan, like, what was his purpose in like punishing him for something or like trying to wound him when he knew Gul'dan? Even if Archimonde died, he knew that Gul'dan would still try to accomplish the Legion's goals because they're giving him a ton of power and he's power hungry. Like, I just don't. Archimonde's choice there at the end just didn't make sense to me.
Well, maybe it wasn't an example of brutish Archimonde. I'm going back on most of the things I said, but maybe it wasn't an example of brutish Archimonde, but more of cunning Archimonde, because he realized, hey, I'm alone with Gul'dan and surrounded by 25 adventurers and an army. I should probably send Gul'dan away before he gets slaughtered. I don't know. But
Yeah.
even so, maybe he was referring to, we made a pact, or we had a pact, or whatever he said, like, I'm not done with you yet, you're going to keep serving the Legion. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see how Gul'dan inevitably causes the next expansion, because that's obviously what he's going to do before we can see what their plan was.
And also, I imagine the next expansion... sorry. I imagine the next expansion will be tied to the Burning Legion, because it's the only tie-in that we have. But I really think the next expansion... I'm sort of circle jerking with you here, so to say, but I really think the next expansion should be Ashara and more Old God stuff.
Yeah, because, I don't know, going to be like, alright, more Legion again, that seems kind of like a, hey, we're getting to the end now. When Azara still exists, and she's, like, super powerful, like, I'm just gonna like be don't worry about her. She's like nothing, even though she like controls the sea now. But don't worry about it.
It kind of reminds me of one of my main complaints about Grom's plan to invade Azeroth back with the Iron Horde, that he didn't bother to secure Draenor before he tried doing it. He barely touched the Draenei. He left the Frostwolves intact. Uh, I feel that he should have secured sort of Draenor before he moved on to Azeroth, but that's neither here nor there.
No, I think it's a good point, and I think it's to go back on when we were talking about them changing the ending midway through. There are data mined models of Grom green and Kil'jaeden green, so obviously they had a plan at some point to make it. And I know Kil'jaeden drinks the blood and turns like gray, which is I don't know why that happened, but I definitely know it definitely seems like there was a plan at one point to just make Grom a slave of Gul'dan, which I don't know if that would be better or not, but at least it would seem like less of a, I guess how would you want to say it, less of a blatant curve like at the middle of the story.
Right. But also, I think they were trying to sort of continue with Grom's character that they had established in Warlords of Draenor, that he is the warlord with the iron will, that nothing can break him, which we sort of saw in previous lore, how he was one of the few chieftains who didn't go down in the internment camps, and he kept fighting, he kept resisting the curse. So an indomitable will is part of Grom's storyline, but at the same time he's surrounded by fell magic.
Yeah, even if you didn't drink the blood, I mean, come on, guys, your own lore states like if you're around foul magic, you become green. So.
Speaking of which, a little fun diversion I was thinking about. Who do you think would win, a fell orc from our universe or a fell orc from Draenor?
I would have to give it to our universe because they would have drank the. Are you considering a fellow orc in alternate Draenor having just drank the blood once?
Well,
Because isn't the implication in our universe that there was an orc and they drank the blood and became green, and then they got empowered further, whether drinking blood or getting an infusion of foul magic and then becoming red?
well, that's our universe. In Draenor, they pretty much drank only once, as far as I know. Which also, uh, it's also kind of interesting because you see Gul'dan's warlocks in the Shadow Council. They're before 6.2, they're green skinned, sort of like people who drank the blood once in our universe, but after maybe once the Legion saw, oh, this blood failed, let's do maybe some different blood. They turned gray with like veins of fell magic visible on their bodies and stuff.
Yeah, I wish they would have explained whose blood that was supposed to be. Like, was that supposed to be Archimonde because he's like the one trying to get there? Is it Mana? Were they like saving Manoroth's musty old blood and they're drinking that again?
I haven't even thought about it being Archimonde. That would really have been an interesting twist on the story.
Because wouldn't that imply that it would make them even stronger? Because Archimonde's obviously stronger than Manoroth. So I just don't know. There's a lot of things that they do this expansion where it's like, hey, that's different than what we thought it was. Why is that? And then they just never explain it.
One speaking of which, I think I would. Uh, Before I go on a tangent, I think our fell orcs would win because they have like bones popping out of their body and stuff.
Right. I think ours would win. I was just not sure if you were going to compare the gray ones of alternate to the red ones of ours, or just like I don't know. I would definitely either way still give it to the ones in our universe. Seems like they doubled down on the fell magic.
Right. Um, One other gripe I had about the expansion is the lack of Kil'jaeden and the sort of forced introduction of Archimonde, because in previous our previous source was like Warcraft 2 and Rise of the Horde, and over there Kil'jaeden is obviously extremely involved, and he directs Gul'dan and earlier on Ner'zhul behind the scenes. But in Draenor, uh, after Gul'dan fails to offer the blood to the orcs. We don't really see anything of Kil'jaeden, and sort of Archimonde takes over and says, all right, Kil'jaeden, step back. We are not relying on the orcs anymore. We're launching a full-scale invasion."
Yeah, that was one of my big gripes. See how they shoot away Archimonde from the story in like a toy, like the dialogue of a toy that you could get. Like they don't. He's never brought up like at all. And it's like that. But him corrupting the orcs is like his whole deal.
Don't you mean Kil'jaeden? Or
yes, that's what I meant. Sorry.
And also another gripe I had was in Rise of the Horde, where Kil'jaeden's main reasoning for invading Draenor was to get rid of the Draenei. But in the novel, every time we see a little conversation between Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, Kil'jaeden is like it says stuff like, "The Draenei are bad. I'm gonna exterminate them." And Archimonde is, "You're wasting your time. Sargeras wants us to do more important things. Why are you even bothering?"
Yeah, exactly. It's just I don't know. Again, another example of why is this character acting differently than what we thought they should act like, and why, and just no explanation.
I mean, one possible explanation was that they realized the link to our Azeroth when the portal was opened, which I guess would sort of explain the demon thing, because once our portal is opened, the Twisting Nether from that universe could have become linked to the Twisting Nether from our universe, but it's still... I'm diving into the fish bucket again.
Right. I don't know. I think it should have been Kil'jaeden instead of Archimonde. Because they can't use the complaint of, well, Kil'jaeden was already a raid boss. Well, because so was Archimonde, so who cares? Like, what's the big... we didn't even fight, like, a full-strength Kil'jaeden either. And so I would like to see how that would go.
I also feel that Kil'jaeden was more hyped up along Warcraft's story to be one of the final bosses alongside Sargeras, while Archimonde died in Warcraft 3 and was sort of always considered to be a bit more secondary to Kil'jaeden, so maybe Archimonde is, in the eyes of the creative team at Blizzard, the more expendable one.
That's true. I've always did feel that way. Like, what they were trying to say, like, hey, Archimonde, he's powerful, but even though Kil'jaeden seems to be almost petty in his want to get revenge, he is more powerful and cunning. So I guess let's save him. But it's just, and then I guess it goes back to the whole conversation of what was the point of any of this then, because it doesn't seem like any of them are coming back to Azeroth with us. We haven't talked about like the ending from the perspective of the other three characters, like Grom, Yrel, and Durotan. I'm really pissed off that they were just like, hey, Grom sat there and auto-attacked during this one fight. All is forgiven. Like, there was not even a mention of them being like, dude, you, like, killed a lot of our people. Like, are you going to pay for that? Or what?
I completely agree, but there is one manga that I'm reading. You'll see the connection I'm making soon, but basically, without trying to spoil as little as possible, one of the main characters turns evil at one point in the story, but near the end of the story turns back to the good guy side and helps defeat the big bad. In that manga, it was justified because his contribution really was vital, and without him, the world would have been destroyed. But really, in Warlords of Draenor, like you said, Grom is just auto-attacking. He's more of a symbol.
Also, and once again, this is what I get a lot of shit for when I talk about our universe's Grom. He goes to help us not out of like a altruistic need to like save Draenor. He does it because he's pissed off that he got screwed over and captured. Like after you free him in the raid, when you kill one of the raid bosses at the end, I forget which one I think it's the big Felguard one.
Yeah,
he's getting tortured by him or whatever.
Yeah, it's the Fel Lord because I just finished editing the lore facts about him.
Right, and so after that, he's just like, I want to go kill Gul'dan, and that's when he runs off, and then he doesn't show back up until the end of the fight. And just like in our universe, when like Jaina and Thrall free him from the Fel corruption or whatever a second time, he's like, I just want to go fucking kill Manoroth because I'm pissed. Like he didn't do it because he was like, I gotta free our people. Like it seems like to me people after the fact are pretending he was, when in fact he's just selfish. and just wanted to get revenge. And that's why, even in this expansion too, he doesn't do anything. He just wants to kill him because he's selfish and is pissed off. Like, that doesn't... You don't get to play the altruistic angle and be like, oh, it's forgiven because you helped us. When your only goal was, I'm pissed because I got screwed over. I want revenge.
To be fair, in the Warcraft 3 story, it was a lot better presented, and it was the logical end for that character.
Well, I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine with him being like that. It's just, I think, even to an extent, the lore team are pretending he wasn't like that. Like, just accept the character for how they were. Like, accept Grom for being like, I want to go kill Manoroth because I'm upset that I got tricked, and blah, blah, blah. Don't after the fact be like, he made this valiant sacrifice for everybody. Because if you remember in that cinematic, Grom's like, I freed myself, then he dies. And Thrall's like, no, you freed all of us. Like, Grom never seemed to think at any point that he was trying to free all of his people. He just wanted to kill Manoroth because he's pissed.
I get what you mean. But going back to the manga thing, I think it would have been a lot more justified if Grom's contribution during the Archimonde fight would have been a lot more substantial than just him standing there on auto attack. For example, one hypothesis I came up with in my head is have Grom sort of be earlier on in the Citadel, not halfway through with Fellord, what's his face, but have him be earlier on, and yes, you free him. You know, he says, I'm gonna kill Gul'dan because screw him. But while you're progressing through the Citadel, sort of see him in the background rallying the orcs that are still loyal to him, and maybe sort of fighting the fell orcs and continuing to rally orcs to his side, especially say after the Kil'rog fight, and maybe when you finally get to Manoroth, he shows up. He helps you kill him along with the Iron Horde army, and then when Archimonde shows up, have the hero sort of realize, oh shit, it's Archimonde. We can't stand against him and the various amounts of demons he's summoning. So have Grom say, heroes, me and the Iron Horde are gonna hold the demons off and use this magical artifacts such as the Ogre's nullification barriers. Why not use those? Use some of these magical artifacts the Iron Horde has gathered to help you in the fight against Archimonde. Basically, have Grom's contribution to the fight matter so you can actually have him be redeemed in a believable way, rather than say, it is over and thus all is well.
Yeah, that would be better. I still would like him to have died, because I think that also would have cycled back to our universe where it's like, hey, this big dude got killed, Grom helped, but it cost him his life. Like, I feel like redemption through death is Grom's thing, and the fact that didn't happen was really weird. And more that didn't happen, that the other two people who were there, whose people were getting waffle stomped by Grom's actions the whole time, were just like, yeah, we're gonna rebuild. I don't want another war crimes where it's like, let's have another trial, but something should have happened.
Yeah, and it also really does feel like Warlords of Draenor was war crimes plus 600 more pages.
Yeah, really. I also, now that you mention it and you're talking about your hypothetical, I forgot that Grom, like, a big part of it, he went to go get the Ogre's nullification magic. That could have been a perfect thing to use. Like, why didn't they not... why didn't they do that? It was, like, all set up for them to be like, that's part of the... I don't know why. Why? Like, why didn't they do that? That makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah, also considering the fact that we fought Kil'jaeden, who is comparable in strength to Archimonde, and we didn't even fight Kil'jaeden at full strength, and we only beat him because of Anvina's sacrifice and the power of Caligos, really.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, man. I wonder if they're like, hey, it was all a switcheroo the whole time. We didn't really kill Archimonde. We just transferred his soul to Gul'dan, and now he escaped. At least that would make more sense than just like, hey, 25 random people killed Archimonde. The end.
Well, probably 20 more, like, because that's the highest difficulty.
Oh, right, 20. And Gul'dan, and Grom auto-attacking, and Yrel being the only one who actually contributes in that fight by putting little pools of light on the ground.
Is Khadgar not in the fight?
He is, but he doesn't do. He has like no mechanics to the fight. He's just there like shooting arcane missiles or something.
Oh, that
Like,
would. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say Urel's the only one where I think her mechanic dispels like some kind of thing that Archimonde does, which otherwise it would wipe your raid or something like that.
That would have been kind of cool because you know how you get a little statue in your garrison once you defeat Archimonde of Khadgar throwing spells at Gul'dan and Gul'dan throwing spells at him. That would have been kind of a cool element in the fight to have Gul'dan and Khadgar in the middle of a magical duel.
Yeah, it would remind me of, I don't know if you play StarCraft, but in the Heart of the Swarm campaign. Oh, did you play Heart of the Swarm?
Yep, I did.
When Kerrigan's like fighting with what's his name? That one guy, and they're both shooting. Yeah, him. Where they're both shooting like magic at each other or whatever they call it in StarCraft, and you have to like help her with Stukov. Like I could have seen it being like that, where it's like, oh shit, you gotta fight Archimonde, but these things are happening, and if Khadgar dies, Gul'dan's gonna do some big bad thing, and we gotta make sure Khadgar doesn't die.
Yeah. Well, then again, I haven't done the Archimonde fight, so I don't know what abilities he has or if he's really that deadly. I mean, he's the final boss of the expansion, so of course he's dangerous, but I don't know if he gives the impression of being dangerous or if he just seems to be a boss.
Yeah, that's what I was actually just gonna bring that up. Archimonde and Gul'dan, I get what they're doing. The story is telling me that this is supposed to be very dangerous. It doesn't feel like it's a very dangerous situation. It just feels like, hey, these dudes show up, let's fight them for loot.
Well, I still really like my Grom scenario of him rallying the Iron Horde after you free him and him being instrumental in defeating Gul'dan, because that would at least bring a bit of reason to the whole Draenor universe.
Right. Yep. So I think it's all. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about with the ending? Because I think we beat that to death.
No, I think that's pretty much it. With the ending.
All right, cool. Do you want to go on to Draenor civilizations?
Would you like to talk about the Warcraft movie first? What news you have of that, or would you?
Sure. So, San Diego Comic-Con happened last weekend, and there was a Warcraft panel where they had basically every single actor from the movie there, and they showed. It wasn't very long. They introduced each person. They showed like a little clip of who their character is and what they do. And then they showed like a 6 to 8 minute, not a trailer, but like footage from the actual movie. And the first half of that actually got leaked online. So...
Hello?
Sorry about that. So basically what... I watched it a couple times. I downloaded it because it got taken down, like every other kind of leak of the movie. You basically, the only leaked stuff was all from the orc perspective. You see Durotan and Draka, who's pregnant at this point. They're arriving at what I think is Hellfire Citadel, or someplace close to the Dark Portal. Orgrim's there. Orgrim's traveling with the Frostwolf for some reason. I don't know if they're changing him to be a Frostwolf or not, but for some reason, he's the only non-Frostwolf orc traveling with the Frostwolves to get there. Draka's... Go ahead.
Sorry, maybe he's just... Blackhand gave him the order, the Frostwolves are coming to the Citadel, welcome them.
Right. So they make it a point to repeat the quote from Rise of the Horde almost verbatim, where they're talking about like, hey, we need food and water because Draenor is dying. Oops, we messed up. Yeah, because after I watched the footage, I went back and read the end of Rise of the Horde, because I actually liked how they opened the portal in Rise of the Horde better, but I'll get to that in a second. So we're there, and you see some orc who is, people have told me, is supposed to be Grom. I can't tell how it is. He has the shoulder guard that Grom in our universe wears. that kind of looks like it, but I don't know. I couldn't tell if it was Grom, but people were saying it was him. So, just for sake of argument, I'll say Grom was talking to just random orcs, talking about how Gul'dan's death magic made him more powerful, and he was obviously green. Because when Draka and Durotan and Orgrim arrive, they make a point to mention, hey, there are some green orcs. That's really weird. Why are there green orcs? And then after supposedly Grom talks about this, we then get to see Gul'dan summoning or opening the portal, and you see tons and tons and tons and tons of cages all around the portal with Draenei in them. And they're definitely Draenei, so Draenei are definitely in the movie, which has surprised me because I didn't think they would be. And so basically this is what I don't understand, and I'll have to see a clearer version to fully understand it, but Gul'dan seemed to be saying something like a single soul of a Draenei was being sacrificed to allow one orc to pass through the portal. Rather than just trying to like open the portal, it seemed like he was like doing a 1-to-1 ratio, like here's 1,000 souls and it will let 1,000 orcs go through the portal. And then like, he gives them a command to like bring back more slaves. I guess the implication is to let more orcs go through the portal. I don't understand like the point of them doing that, but maybe it's just because the footage was low quality and we didn't see all of the scene. But it didn't make sense to me in that regard. But then we see Gul'dan opening the actual portal, and he has like this really weird quote where he's like life and death and life and death and life and death, and he keeps repeating that, and then he sucks all the souls out, which that looks cool. And he opens the portal with the souls, and that looks cool. And then a bunch of orcs just run through. Durotan begins going through, tells Draka, I'll go first. She nods, and he goes through, and then the best... I wasn't too impressed with the CGI of the male orcs, because they're still comically large and stupid looking, in my opinion. Like, there's a scene I forgot to mention where they're in a hut, Durotan and Draka, and it's a scene similar to, I think it happens in Rise of the Horde, where Draka's like, I thought of a name for our child, and Durotan's like, it's the father's job to give him a name. And then Draka's like, how will you do that if I'm not with you? And then he like takes her hand, and his hand is so comically larger than hers is that like I get that they are trying to keep that ratio from the games, but it was so ridiculous. Like his hand was so big, like he could wrap his hand around her entire head. Is how big his hands were. And that I saw that and I was like, whoa! But yeah, so at the very end of the trailer, the best part I think of the CG is Draka walking through the portal, and she looks great. Like Draka, it looks amazing. You also see Garona for a quick second. She looks good too, but she's not CGI. So Draka looks fantastic, and then she walks through the portal, and that's where the footage ends.
Interesting. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what wasn't recorded is apparently there's a whole bunch of stuff on the other side of the portal. You see a bunch of stuff from the humans' perspectives. You see Medivh and Khadgar using magic. You see Lane and Lothar like talking about how the orcs are evil. And then I guess one of the final shots are like the two armies clashing, and there's apparently griffin fighters flying overhead, and there's like a quick shot of like high elves in the movie as well as dwarves, and you actually see Ironforge for a second. So they seem to be like fast forwarding the Alliance of Lordaeron. I don't know if they're going to be called the Alliance of Lordaeron because that wouldn't make sense, but they seem to be fast forwarding the idea of the Alliance of Lordaeron to the First War instead.
Right. Well, one of the things I remember reading about the original Warcraft movie before they actually started doing it was that it would bend the lore. It wouldn't necessarily respect it. It would be a movie for its own sake. Although I don't know if we should actually take it as being canon or if it's just a fun little filler. On the Alliance of Lordaeron thing, I can kind of see Ironforge being involved because Ironforge is sort of close by to Stormwind, but I don't see Ironforge being invaded because it would involve the Horde reaching Blackrock Mountain, which only happened in Tides of Darkness, which was... Well, it happened in-game in Warcraft 1, but it didn't happen in the lore except in Tides of Darkness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I gotcha. I don't know if I said it mistakenly, but the clip... This is the problem because this actual part of the clip wasn't recorded. But the clip doesn't show Ironforge being attacked. It just shows Ironforge like existing. Like so, I guess a scene happens at Ironforge, and there are dwarves fighting at the end with the big battle, as well as elves. And I think there are mixed reports that someone told me there might be gnomes too. So I think because there are scenes in Dalaran, and Dalaran seems to be flying already. So I think they're just doing that to distinguish Dalaran from Stormwind. Because what's an easier way to be like, hey, this is a mage city, than to have it flying?
I do know it was flying.
Yeah, there was a fan art, or not fan art, but concept art of it flying, and supposedly there was like a very quick glance of it, and it was flying already. So it wasn't like flying anywhere particular; it was just floating in the air.
Interesting. Um, back to the sort of alliance of Lordaeron. I can kind of see the dwarves being involved. I don't see other human nations being involved because that was the whole point of the alliance of Lordaeron. They suddenly woke up with Stormwind refugees on their shores, preaching about, oh, the horde is coming, the horde is coming, and the dwarves have already fallen as well, but the horde is coming. Um,
Right.
As to high elves, I imagine there would be high elf envoys to Stormwind. I imagine there might even be an elven quarter in Stormwind. But I don't necessarily see the nation of Quel'Thalas being involved, considering how reluctant they were to be involved in the alliance of Lordaeron at all.
Yeah, I could see them being like, because however big of a role Dalaran plays, and I'm not assuming anything based on the official lore, but I could see Dalaran getting involved and sending maybe high elf mages. Like maybe that's how high elves are in the fight, because it doesn't seem like they're a big part of it. Because naturally they're a much bigger part going forward. But I don't know. At the very least, I have a confirmation that there are dwarves and high elves, and possibly also gnomes. So, I mean, basically the entire alliance of Lordaeron races. Maybe not all of the nations yet, but they're setting that up one war early, which I don't have a problem with. I think it's if they're trying to consolidate the story quickly, I think that makes sense.
Well, I would also like it if it was mentioned like something like King in a scene with King Lane. Oh, we should ask for help from the northern kingdoms, and then I don't know, the Stormwind fleet gets burned or stolen, because we do know that the orcs stole a bunch of ships from the kingdom of Stormwind to launch their invasion of Lordaeron. But
Yep.
I don't know, stuff to set up like Warcraft 2, sort of pun intended.
Or, even just, maybe their envoys do get through, and Gilneas, for example, is like, sorry, that's your problem. At least to set up the personalities of the different nations. Because they're not, once again, they're not all the same. Alterax's like, fuck that shit. Gilneas is like, it's not our problem.
There's also that kind of reminds me of a line that I really like from the novel The Last Guardian, where Khadgar is basically asking Medivh to help the Stormwind with the orcs. This was before they found that Medivh was Sargeras, and Medivh says a line: "Why should I help Stormwind in this matter? Next, should I be asked to settle a trade dispute between Lordaeron and Alterac?" And I think it was interesting because it's a bit of a world building remark, because it sort of says before Stormwind itself fell, everyone else thought, oh, this is just a local problem of Stormwind, like sort of a minor plague or stuff like that, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah, it definitely, yeah, especially, not until, I think, of course, naturally it would be like this, but not until Stormwind is destroyed, where everyone else is like, oh, shit, it's bad now, guys, we gotta do something now. Before, I could definitely see where all the other nations would be like, they got, a kobold problem or something down there, they can handle it. And all of a sudden, the kobold destroy all of Stormwind, and then they're like, oh, oops.
Yeah. I also it's also a little bit I'm tying it a little bit to Tides of Darkness, but speaking of the dwarves and Blackrock Mountain, the little scene where they justified the orcs discovering the mountain was basically, the orcs are in Stormwind or around Stormwind. They have scouts in Lordaeron. The scouts in Lordaeron said the forest trolls are having problems with the humans. Some orcs sail to Lordaeron, rescue the forest trolls, return to Stormwind. Then the forest trolls introduce them to Blackrock Mountain, which also,
Hmm.
which seemed a little bit. I mean, I guess I get that they were trying to explain why they wouldn't have discovered Blackrock Mountain back then, but why not make it discovered? I don't know.
Yeah, that's strange. I didn't know that. Or I guess I haven't played any of those games in a long time. But
Well, it wasn't in the game, it was in the Tides
oh,
of Darkness novel.
was it? Oh, okay. Well, I haven't read that in a long time. But yeah, that is kind of strange. Like I feel like they could have done a different race to be like, hey, there's this big fortress city. Like maybe even like Dark Iron Dwarves or something. We're like, hey, maybe if they help us fucking kill all these guys who we hate, we can betray them and take it for ourselves. 'Cause that's what we want.
Yeah, that's all. I also kind of wish we would have known about how the Dark Iron Dwarves interacted with the Old Horde back in its heyday, because they obviously interacted in some way, unless the dwarves dug holes and hidden them.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, do they? I don't think they do. Like, we don't know that they did.
No, we definitely don't know what happened. We know the Horde occupies Blackrock Spire, which is the fortress itself, but we don't know what happens to the Dark Iron Dwarves. We know after the Horde is defeated, Rend Blackhand goes to Blackrock Spire. Then the dwarves rise up against the orcs. The orcs are losing, and then the Black Dragonflight intervenes on behalf of the orcs.
Right. Hmm. Well, I guess hopefully they keep at least some of them. Like I, there doesn't seem to be any indication of dragons or anything in the movie, and I guess because there weren't really dragons in the first war, but that's one thing I hope, because Duncan Jones, who's directing it, has already been like, look, I'm kind of expecting at this point for it to be already a trilogy, like before it even comes out. So he's like, yo, Chris Metzen and I, we've already established how we could make 3 movies, and I was like, oh, you very confident.
I kind of wonder if the trilogy will be sort of like Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, and Warcraft 3, or sort of Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, and Lord of the Clans.
Yeah, I'm not sure how, because I get they could do Warcraft 1 in a single movie, but the other 2 wars are really big, like way bigger in scope, and I don't know how they possibly could condense, especially the third war with like Arthas and Illidan and the Night Elves and
Yeah.
the Burning Legion and Kel'Thuzad and like holy shit.
And also, we sort of forgot, but Beyond the Dark Portal itself. How would they.
Yeah, exactly. Is that going to be? Would that be part of the second movie? But that would make it really long. And also, there seems to be. I was just going to bring this up and I forgot because we went on a tangent. But I don't know. I was looking at the IMDb page for the movie, and I don't. I've been asking people who were there, and there doesn't seem to be an Erzul in the movie, which kind of bums me out. I don't like him that much, but he's integral to the story. Like, yeah,
Well,
I don't see him there, which kind of is sad.
well, to be fair, his story after he was found out by Gul'dan and lost all of his power and influence was, I am basically kept around for Kil'jaeden to laugh at me. Oh, I saw some of Gul'dan's plans. I better warn Duratan. Oh, I'm just gonna sit around and mope about. He does have one little final. After they drink the blood of Manaroth, he does have one little final scene in Rise of the Horde where Gul'dan tells him, "You and your clan will remain on Draenor," and Ner'zhul sort of shrugs.
Yeah, I actually just read that. That's a good part.
Yeah, but I don't really see how they would introduce Ner'zhul in the story of the Warcraft movie unless they put that scene in and sort of set it up for a sequel, which would be Beyond the Dark Portal. Because after Ner'zhul shrug, he just mopes about. He's sort of responsible with maintaining in the Beyond the Dark Portal novel. He's sort of responsible with maintaining the Dark Portal because the scene how as it's presented in Beyond the Dark Portal of the portal collapsing is two orcs are sitting around playing dice, and then they suddenly see orcs running from the portal. They go to warn Ner'zhul. Ner'zhul arrives fairly quickly, asks what's going on, and then he gets hit by a rock and collapses.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he should be a big part of the movie because he's not in the story. But if supposedly this character that people are saying is Grom, and he doesn't have a big part, I think Ner'zhul deserves to at least have a cameo. Like, at least be like, hey, there was this one guy who Gul'dan was his student and then betrayed him. Like, or maybe even not, they don't even have to explain even that much. Like, just have him exist in the story. Because that's a big thing about world building that I like, is just knowing that, hey, this character existed before he was important to the story arc at the moment.
Right. I also want to ask a question about that sentence you just said, but I'll ask you about that a little bit later.
Okay.
But in regards to Grom, I think that's just basically just a tie into Warlords of Draenor itself, because Grom is on the cover of Warlords of Draenor. We see him basically almost everywhere, which I guess they did a fairly good job of setting up Grom if Grom was meant to be the final villain of the expansion, but he wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
I think the only other thing about the movie that I found odd was they made like this weird distinction between Gul'dan's death magic, which I had thought was just them calling fel magic death magic, because it kind of is, but there's also necromancy, blah blah blah. That's a different debate. But they make a distinction between like Gul'dan's death magic and then the fel, and they act like the fel is like a thing rather than magic, and it was very confusing because Gul'dan, when he's about to open the portal, he says like, "Bring me back more prisoners, more sacrifices for the fel," and I was like, "What? What does that mean?" Like, I assume he acts like it's a living creature or some kind of thing, but it's just corrupted arcane magic. So it was really weird that they decided to make a distinction between like Gul'dan's weird ass magic and then the fel, and that was something that stuck out to me. Like, why make that complicated for no reason?
yeah, that also seemed a little. That seems a little weird. Maybe if to be fair, film magic is described by definition by dictionary, so to say, as magic that functions by taking a living being and draining the life out of it, so to say. That's how film magic works.
Yeah, exactly. So why would they be like, this is death magic? Like, because what is that supposed to be? Fel magic? Like, what's death magic? When I hear death magic, to me, I think of like necromancy. But I could see where people would think fel magic, but then why make the distinction at all? I'm trying to look at it from a non-lore fan's perspective, because I know people who, not even my parents, who I'm convincing to go see it, but a friend of mine who doesn't play Warcraft, I'm trying to convince them to go see it, and I'm just trying to think of it like, if they were watching that, I think they would be confused, because why would they make a distinction between those two?
Well, maybe I'm not addressing Gul'dan's line because that always seems a bit weird, but quote-unquote Grom's line, maybe Grom isn't as versed in magical theory as we are, and just sees, oh, Gul'dan's magic killed something and then does something with that magic, so it must be death magic. I don't know.
Right. One final thing I didn't bring up is when he says that line to Grom, when he says that, to me, I don't know if they're like cutting out the Legion angle or not, because Grom didn't know that Manaroth was there in our universe, but he knows that he drank something and it turned him green and made him crazy powerful. Like, is that him just saying like Gul'dan's magic made me strong? Like, I don't know. Maybe Grom again is just not smart and just was like, I drank this and now I'm good. It must have been magic. But it seemed weird that he said it was his magic that made him strong and not like this thing that he drank. I'm just concerned that they're removing Manaroth, which isn't important now, but once again, from a world-building perspective, Manaroth is really integral to Grom's character development, like later on.
Yeah, that's also kind of weird now that I think about it, because in Rise of the Horde, like you said, Grom doesn't know that he's drinking the blood of a living creature, so to say. Uh, no orc over there outside of Gul'dan himself and other members of the Shadow Council. No, only Durotan knows because he got the letter that he would be drinking the blood of twisted souls. But
Yep.
later on in Warcraft 3, when Manoroth tricks Grom into drinking his blood again, uh, we see Manoroth walking up to Grom and saying, "Hello, Gromash," and Grom is Manoroth. It can't be. So,
Right. Mm.
uh,
Even the games can't be consistent.
yeah, I'm just confused right now.
I don't know. I guess I keep saying my last thing about the movie, but the actual last thing I want to say about the movie is I kind of like how the portal was opened more in Beyond the Dark Portal or Rise of the Horde, where like Gul'dan wants to kill the child and Durotan's like no, and there's like a fight, but then he does it anyway. Because I mean, the CGI of seeing all of the Draenei souls be sucked out in the movie is cool, but I guess it humanizes Durotan more to be like, this is unacceptable. We can't kill a child, and like he's trying to stop it. Whereas in the movie, he's just kind of standing there while Gul'dan like kills a shitload of people to open up a portal. I don't know. I think I like the book one better, but I'll have to see how the movie plays it out.
Well, if they would have gone the book version of Gul'dan tries to kill a child, Durotan opposes it, and then because of Durotan's opposition, a big fight breaks out. I think it would be treading a bit of a fine line between giving exposition on the Horde, because it does portray the sort of division between the Horde, between the honorable Durotan and the vile Gul'dan. It does portray that, but it also sort of forces an important scene on the viewer very early on, which I'm not sure the average viewer would be able to comprehend, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I understand from that perspective. I think I was thinking of it more as another way to humanize Durotan, because in all the clips that we've seen, he doesn't seem to care about like the conquest stuff like that. He's more like, "Hey, my wife's pregnant, and we don't have any food."
Right. Um, so I guess that's pretty much it for the Warcraft movie, isn't it?
Yeah, the clip was good. I had some problems with it. I also didn't mention Gul'dan's face looked weird to me for some reason. Like his the shape of his. See, my problem is now with Warlords being out before the movie, and this version of Warlords or of Gul'dan is I think is like the best thing about this expansion is that they nailed Gul'dan so perfectly, and that this Gul'dan in Warlords is what I think of is the quintessential Gul'dan that when because the thing is he wears the same, like the movie Gul'dan looks exactly the same, like wardrobe wise. He has the same robes on. He has those weird spikes on his shoulders with the skulls on them, but his face looks entirely different. The shape of his face is very like long, and his eyes are like in one shot it looked like he had no pupils and they were just like white like magical craziness in his eyes. So I don't know. I had a couple of problems with the movie, and I got a lot of flack for it by talking about it on Twitter, and I'm upset about that because I was defending a lot of the movie. People are nitpicking stupid shit like Stormwind being bigger, and rather than being smaller like it was in the first war. But I don't know. As a Gul'dan fanboy, I was disappointed with how he actually looked. So that's about all I think that's literally everything I could say about the movie.
Quick question in regards to the character people say is Grom. I imagine you would have been able to tell, but I have to ask anyway. Was his jaw tattooed black?
Oh, you know what? I don't even know. I didn't notice that. I was looking because I forgot that that's a thing for Grom, but I was looking for more like Gorehowl or like his face is very distinctive, like in Warlords and in the story, and I didn't notice it. I don't know. I didn't check that, so I'm not sure.
Interesting. Um, I don't think. Do we have anything else we can talk about the Warcraft movie?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I guess we ought to move on to the other topic I was thinking about, which I have nicknamed Civilization Draenor. Bas- Basically, I sort of thought up of it. I would like to do a little analysis of the various civilizations that we see in Warlords of Draenor, because, for me at least, the one of the main attractions to Warcraft's lore is the world building more so than the characters itself. Although there are some excellent characters, I worry mostly about the world building, and like I mentioned in the Warcraft movie discussion about Medivh's little line of why should I help with this little thing? Next I should be asked to help with a trade dispute. I like world building. That's what I said.
Right.
So I guess the first civilization we can talk about would be the ogres, wouldn't it? And how they sort of contrast with our universe's ogres.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
I talk a lot, so you can. This can be your thing where you're mostly talking, and I'll just interject every once in a while.
right. Well, in this universe, we see the ogres to quote Chris Metzen, at the height of their civilization. We see, like we mentioned before, the nullification magic that they were researching, while in our universe there wasn't even a hint at the existence of an ogre empire before the orcs came. The only hints of civilization among the ogres which we saw in before the horde was formed was they were basically Gruul's servants, and the ground beat them, and they were not unhappy with the ground, but they followed them anyway. That's the only sort of details we found about the ogres before warlords. But now, what do you think about the fact that they introduced this whole sort of they had an entire civilization, and them and the ground are two completely separate entities that are still somehow tied together?
You know what? Now that I'm like thinking about it, I don't. I mean, this might be basic, but I don't. Weren't the others? I thought they were not natural to Azeroth. Weren't they? They were definitely. There were definitely some brought with the horde. Were there ogres on Azeroth before the horde showed up?
No, they weren't.
Okay, so I guess that's probably why we didn't see them. Are we talking about ogres in our universe? Even on Draenor weren't like that. Is that what you meant? Weren't like crazy Empire ones?
Well, I basically I meant in our universe the only information we had about the ogres before the first war, before the horde, was they are servants of Gruul, and
Right.
in Draenor we know that we find out that they had a gigantic empire with a long tradition of sorcerer kings, and how they split from the Grand, and they are a separate entity from the Grand, but they're still sort of tied together a little bit, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm wondering if the implication there is that after the Ogre Empire failed or declined so much as to not exist anymore, maybe them becoming servants of the Gran happened like relatively soon to the actual story. Like maybe instead of them being like that way the whole time in our universe, maybe it was the same, and just because we lost so much of, I guess, the history when Draenor blew up. Maybe that's a recent thing. Like, I don't know.
Well, in yes, in Warlords of Draenor, we find out that before the Ogre Empire, all ogres were indeed subservient to Gruul, but then one of the ogres killed a Gron and then proved to the other ogres that they are not invincible, and then a giant uprising from them, all that.
Interesting, but wouldn't that imply, sorry, that Gruul is like super, super old then? Because we know that there were like tons of, like we know this empire was not like shivved, right?
No, it was at least hundreds of years, perhaps thousands. Though I don't know about Gruul himself. In Burning Crusade, we know that he was the father of all the Grond that you would see in Blade's Edge Mountains, but we
Right.
don't know if he was their progenitor or not. In Warlords of Draenor, we found out that there was another race before Gruul, the Magnoron, and before the Magnoron there were the Earth Giants. But yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's another thing that I wish there was. We got a lot of backstory, but there's still some connecting stuff that hopefully maybe Warcraft Chronicles will cover.
my personal theory on this was after the Horde formed in our universe, they annihilated or enslaved the Ogre Empire, and while doing so, they killed most of its leadership. That's why most of the ogres before Gul'dan turned them into two-headed ogres. Most of the ogres we saw with the Horde were dumb enforcers, while in Draenor we see a lot of ogre mages. We see ogres that are not necessarily smart by our standards, but they are smart for ogre standards, if you know what I mean.
Right. I guess that also would make sense why finding ogre magi was so rare in our universe. Because if they did go and raffle stomp them, I would assume the mages were like their biggest threat, and so they took most of them out.
Yeah, and I imagine once the leadership of the ogres was cut, mostly, that the rest were either enslaved or they fled back to their ancestral homelands in Gorground, what would become Blade's Edge Mountains, where the Gron enslaved them again. That's what I imagine happened.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Do we? I don't really remember, but do we see any two-headed ogres in Warlords of Draenor outside of Cho'Gall and Imperator Margok?
Oh God, I actually don't know. I feel like the answer is yes, but I can't point to one. Because they didn't make it seem like it was a big deal that there were a lot of two-headed ogres in Warlords. There just were.
Because in our universe, it was stated that Cho'Gall was was the first ogre, two-headed ogre to be born in a generation. I think it was the term they used, and that's why he was so special. And why he became such a trusted attendant to Gul'dan. But in Warlords of Draenor, like I said, we see more intelligent ogres, not necessarily smart but more intelligent. But I don't really remember if they were two-headed outside of Imperator Margok or not.
Right. I'm looking it up now, and I actually don't see. I see. Let's see. Cho'Gall, Imperator Margok. I don't see really any of the other ones. I mean, there was Dentarg. He was two-headed.
Oh yes, Dentarg. I completely forgot about him.
And he is two-headed in the legendary quest chain. You do fight him. But I still think that's a special case because there's not many other ones.
Right, that's interesting. It's also, it's also kind of weird how Dentarg was Ner'zhul's attendant and now he's fighting for Gul'dan.
I thought the same thing. Yeah, it was weird. Like, because there's like no build up to him. You just show up to get this orb and he's there. And he's like, blah, 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 Gul'dan, something, something. And I was like, oh, alright.
I guess he might have defected after Ner'zhul's death, or maybe?
I guess it's just weird that he wasn't there. Like, he wasn't with Ner'zhul. I thought that was weird.
Yeah. Anything else to talk about with the ogres?
I don't think so. No, I think that's about it. I think they're cool. I like I like the magic part. I like how they really expanded the magical part of the Ogre Empire in Warlords.
Right. Right. That's also kind of interesting. The magical part. One thing I did remember about the ogres was, remember how in Kargath's Lords of War we see him rise up against the ogres and kill someone we presume to be their imperator or just a random ogre leader, and then we see Gorem in his Lords of War kill the ogre imperator as well. Well, in the short story about the ogres that was released, it was stated that Gorem killed the previous imperator before Imperator Margok, but did Kargath kill an imperator as well, or did he just kill a random ogre then?
Interesting. I forgot that they clarified that Gorem killed an imperator because I thought it was switched. I thought it was swapped. I thought it was that Gorem just happened to have killed a high-ranking ogre while Kargath actually killed an imperator. But I don't think they. Yeah, I definitely don't think they clarified for Kargath's. I think it was just some dude overseeing, like, some really high-ranking, maybe one of the Imperator's, like, council or whatever they were called, that was overseeing. Because they make a point to talk about, in the raid, the Imperator rarely came down to watch the Colosseum.
Oh, right.
So maybe it was just some other high-ranking guy that he killed, who shows up more often or something.
That makes sense. Yeah. Um, I also was kind of wondering how Imperator Margak has two heads, but his predecessor, the Imperator that was killed by Grom, had only one.
Hmm. Maybe that is why Margok is seemingly so much more powerful. I don't know.
It is why he is king.
Right, exactly. Just going off like a slight tangent, but still related to this. That short story was way better than I thought it was gonna be. It's like one of my favorites. Like I really really like seeing the Iron Horde interact with the ogres, and Imperator Margok's perspective was just it was interesting to. It's one of those things where again I was sad that I didn't get to see that before we killed him. Like I loved like the look at his character. I thought that was really well done.
Definitely, I definitely agree. Um, I remember because I did a lore facts on the ogres a long time ago before Warlords of Draenor was released, but uh, two-headed ogres will procreate to make other two-headed ogres, even if they only became two-headed through Gul'dan's magic or they were naturally born. So,
Hmm.
so it makes me wonder how the title of Imperator is passed down, or if it's passed down along a family tree at all, or if it's how it is inherited. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought I'm trying to think. I guess maybe they didn't. I had thought they clarified that it was like not through lineage, but through like power. Like
Mm.
if one of them died, the most powerful in their council became the next one. But I guess they never clarified. But I think that would make sense from what little knowledge we have from within the ogre power structure. Like Imperator Margok definitely ruled through like fear and like beating the shit out of that one guy like all the time.
Yeah. Um, like I said, the ogres of Warlords of Draenor are definitely more intelligent than the ogres of our universe.
Yes, and thus more interesting in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I guess we could move on to another civilization.
Sure.
I guess the next one would be the Arakkoa, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So basically, before Warlords of Draenor, the only information of the sorry, the only information about the Arakkoa we had was from Burning Crusade, where we saw this shadowy hunchback race of avian people who hate all outsiders for reasons we did not know at the time, and we learned of their reverence for the Talon King Terok. We learned how he was a legend in the eyes of the Arakkoa, about how he built Sketis himself. We learned in part about the Apexis. Mostly the only thing we learned was they once inhabited Blade's Edge Mountains and they were ancient Arakkoa. Uh, which the Apexis I think we've sort of discussed in the previous podcast we did.
Right.
Um, but other than in Burning Crusade, the only other information about the Arakkoa we had was how they were basically split into three, possibly more parts. There was the exiles living in Shatraf City, which were redeemed by the Narru and thus followed the light. There was the main group of Arakkoa, whose capital was in Skedis and who worshipped Terok, and we had information at the time that they also worshipped Rukhmar, which is kind of funny in hindsight. Uh,
Right. Yeah, definitely.
and we then had the Sefik, who followed the insane Talon King Ikis, who believed himself to be the reincarnation of Terok.
Wasn't there overlap between those guys and the Skedis ones? I thought there was, maybe not.
Between who and who?
The ones that followed Talon King Ikis and then the ones that were in Skedis worshipping Tarok. I thought that there was overlap between those two groups, but maybe not.
No, they were separate. As far as far as I remember, the Sefik only lived in the appropriately named Sefik halls, while the other Arakkoa, the ones that worshipped the Talon King Terok, were pretty much the main group of Arakkoa in Burning Crusade.
Right. Okay.
And the final group of Arakkoa that we learned about in Burning Crusade was the ones that worship. I don't know if worship is the right word. That somehow came in contact with the old gods, which we've mentioned in earlier in this podcast. And the only thing we knew about them was at one point they were in Shadowmoon Valley. They were going to fight the orcs, and then Gul'dan raised the hand of Gul'dan and murdered them all. But and then we find the partially summoned old god in their camp.
Yep, which still has not been explained other than them saying that wasn't actually Cthulhu, even though they use the same model.
I guess it could have been after Draenor imploded and was exposed to the twisting nether that some old god from across the cosmos began to whisper in Draenor, or maybe there are old gods on Draenor because I don't remember exactly why, but I think there were a few theories that there might be at least one old god on Draenor based on a few creatures that you would find there, but yeah.
Well, the initial thought was during the alpha when they were still developing the Spires of Iraq story, when it seemed like they were just going to make up their own stuff rather than stay true to our universe's lore. People thought that Seth was an old god, and that's why the Sethic were worshiping him. And there still really is not a great confirmation of what Seth is. Like he's this weird serpentine bird creature thing. But I guess he's not an old god. They said he's not, but that's what people thought initially because I don't remember exactly the reason why, but I was one of the people on that train because I thought that would be interesting. That the reason why Seth was so the Sethic and Seth were so like crazy were because he was an old god.
To be honest, I kind of like the little Arakkoa mythology we have in Warlords of Draenor about how Rukhmar birthed the Arakkoa after, and then saw Seth's corruption and cursed the children that were corrupted by him, and then the conflict between Anzu and Seth, and the whole, I guess you could call it love triangle between Seth, Anzu, and Rukhmar. But but it's definitely an interesting story. But like you said, I'm not sure how exactly it fits in the larger lore of Warcraft.
Well, that's the thing though. I don't know if it necessarily needs to because it's my favorite part of Warlords of Draenor. The Eric I think I said this last time in the podcast too. The Arakkoa part in Spires of Iraq story is easily my favorite part because I think it's so. Once again, I talked to the guy who made that whole storyline, and he only worked on that. And to me, it very much seems like a complete constructed story made by one person who had a clear vision in mind what the story was going to be, how he went about making it, rather than a bunch of people sticking their fingers in the pot making a bunch of weird story contributions. Mm-hmm. It feels completely clean. It feels like it has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. All of the things are all of the actors in that are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And especially the short story further exemplifies this by providing backstory to what's her name? I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now. The leader of the Pure Ones who's crazy.
Right, that one.
Yeah, the one who leads who's dead now. But yeah, I just think it was. I don't know if it necessarily needs to tie into the rest of the whole overarching Warcraft story. It's just a group of people, and this thing happened with this with this race, and it made sense.
One thing I really, really liked about Spires of Iraq as well was how they tied all the. There was a lot of subtlety in the Spires of Iraq story, and they tied a lot of elements that happened in Burning Crusade. Basically, sorry, in Burning Crusade there was a question where you would summon Terox's incomplete spirit, and then you would fight him, and he would be sort of crazy. And they explained it perfectly in Spires of Iraq, and they explained how the reason why he became crazy, about how he lost his daughter, and how he the later years of his rule were sort of darker and darker, and how he retreated into the Shadow Realm, I believe. And I guess it ties into Warlords of Draenor with how the Arakkoa were trying to summon the Terok, and then the adventurers, intervened and instead became his avatar, and then cleansed Terok instead of summoning his corrupted version.
Yeah, but then that ties into 6.2 where Iskar is like, that's bullshit. I wanted to summon my dude, so I'm gonna join up with Gul'dan and drink the blood and become pure again. Cause screw all of you. And then so that forces the good Arakkoa that are left to combine and go fight him. Like
Mm-hmm.
they somehow, what the genius of the Arakkoa storyline in Warlords is, they somehow managed to retroactively fit in the Burning Crusade stuff, and it made sense why everything happened. It made sense why the outcome of Burning Crusade happened the way that it did, with the knowledge of all the stuff that happens in Warlords of Draenor. They somehow managed to retroactively do that like 8 years later, and it all, like you said, it all fits and makes perfect sense why the outcome of the Arakkoa in BC happened the way that it did.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I mean, I guess one thing we can talk about is sort of describe the civilization of the Arakkoa in Warlords of Draenor. Uh, should I do that? Should we do that?
Sure. I mean, we covered a lot of that last time, but if I don't remember if we missed anything, but we could go over it like quickly again.
Well, I'm sort of saying it because we described the ogres in Warlords of Draenor, and I described the Arakkoa in Burning Crusade. So maybe
Yeah, right.
provide a little contrast. Well, basically in Warlords of Draenor, the Arakkoa are divided into the pure-born Arakkoa who can fly. We learn in Warlords of Draenor that the Arakkoa not originally this shadowy, hunched-over race. They were this proud, soaring bird people, so to say. And we find out that originally they also worship the sun. Worship might not be the right word, but they at least revered it. The sun was sort of their symbol. And we learn that the Arakkoa, the modern Arakkoa society was basically kind of a monarchy, and at the time of King Terok, the Talon King Terok, the priest in that society, the God, I forgot their name.
The adherents of
Yes,
Rukhmar
yes,
were the zealots.
yes. The adherents of Rukhmar. They basically, uh, God, I can't think of the word for.
They like plotted against him and overthrew him, like behind the scenes.
Right. The word I'm thinking of.
Conspired?
Um, to lie about something. To. Well, and anyway, basically, yes, they plotted against him. They spread lies about him, and eventually they threw off Terok into the pools of Seth, which Seth is basically the evil god in Arakkoa mythology, so to say. And they threw Terok along with pretty much all of his adherents, including his daughter. Uh, However, many of the Arakkoa that they threw survived thanks to the intervention of another god of the Arakkoa, Anzu. And Arakkoa society has sort of been divided into two since then. The pure-born adherents of Rukhmar, who afterwards rewrit all of the history of the Talon King and Rukhmar, and basically said, "Oh, they're evil, they're corrupted. Do not touch them. If you even touch them, the corruption will spread to you." And our Arakkoa outcasts were basically just trying to sort of live in peace. I mean, the conflict between the outcasts and the adherents of Rukhmar didn't really start until in Warlords of Draenor when the adherents started to exterminate them. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it was more like they were the corrupted ones were more being used just to keep everyone in line through fear. But then all of a sudden they just decide, let's just kill everybody with their giant ion cannon weapon that they have.
Right, because basically, after they deposed Tarok, any other political prisoners they would find, anyone who learned the true history of the Arakkoa, they would then throw off into the pools of Seth. Uh, and then we sort of jump into the story when a new leader of the adherents of Rukhmar has started to exterminate the Arakkoa outcasts along with nearby Draenei villages, because The first time we meet them is at an incinerated Draenei village, if you remember, in Taldor.
Yep, and you just see like Draenei running out, like help us, and you're like, what's going on? There's these crazy birdmen shooting lasers at us.
And then the adventurers help, like I said, redeem Terok and become the avatar of Terok, and then we kill the Sky Sage, I think was her title.
High Sage Virix. I looked it up.
High Sage Virix. We killed High Sage Virix, and then basically the adherents of Rukhmar become buddy with. Well, not the adherents of Rukhmar. The pureborn Arakkoa become buddy with the outcasts.
Yeah, because the Order of the Awakened, which is the combination, they existed before 6.2. So it was kind of like when Virix died, like the whole power structure of the adherents kind of just collapsed, and like they just disappeared because they're all dead basically. Because we like Skyreach was their capital, and we just like what the fuck pwned that whole place. And so the ones that were left were like Rashad. To his credit, he's just like Lord Walker Show in my opinion, which is why I like him. He's like, dudes, we gotta stop fighting. We've been fighting for so long. We really need to join up because there's this crazy shit going on in Tanan Jungle, and Iskar has disappeared, and he's doing this corrupted nonsense with Gul'dan. We should go fight him. And so then they all join up together, and the end of the story is kind of it's cool. The reason I like it is the end of the Arakkoa story is basically what the entire story of Rukhmar had like a lullaby that the Arakkoa used to tell everybody, where it was like shadows and light. They might oppose one another, but one needs the other to survive, and blah 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 blah. And the way that the Arakkoa story ends is true to that story, and Shadow and Light, their representatives finally come together to fight one of their own, ironically enough.
Right. And also another plot line we see with the Arakkoa outcasts is how they lament the loss of their ability to fly, basically, and it is part of the temptation of. And it is part of the story how Iskar, the former leader of the Arakkoa outcasts, is drawn to Gul'dan, who promises him, "You will fly again."
Yep, and interestingly enough, the Iskar is the. I guess going back to the Garrison campaign real quick, Iskar is in one of the missions, and he's the one that actually accomplishes his Gul'dan's goal of trying to find the cipher, which I thought was cool. Like everyone else is failing because they can't find out where it is, and Iskar's like, "Yeah, it's over here. I got my dudes to find it." And Gul'dan's like, that's why Gul'dan gives him the blood and makes him fly again because he succeeded.
It's also kind of interesting. I also found it kind of interesting how Fel magic sort of restored Iskar to his flying state while also imbuing him with obviously Fel magic. It kind of reminded me of. It's a bit going off on a tangent, but it kind of reminded me of an Ask CDev that was a while ago, where a question was asked about if Worgen are so obsessed with blood and killing people and such, why aren't they blood crazy maniacs while they are Death Knights? And the answer was the indomitable will of the Lich King basically makes them obedient. And it kind of reminded me of that because Fel magic basically replaced the corruption that of Seth and took over.
Yeah, Rashad even says that during that quest. He says something like, "Iskar's lost to us. He traded one curse for another."
Right. As to, I mean, the only other thing we have to talk about the Arakkoa is the mythology with Rukhmar and Seth and such. But is it worth mentioning?
I think you covered it as much of it as would be necessary. Like, I don't know how much more, like you mentioned, like, oh, there was the triangle between her and Anzu and Seth, and she hated Seth. Once Seth corrupted some of the Arakkoa, she cast them out, but Anzu found them, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think is there anything else we didn't actually cover about that? I mean, they used the sun. The sun's more than just like a revered thing to them. It actually kind of seems to like empower them to some degree, because in the short story, Virix gets punished by being put in a cage and having sunlight cut off from her, and she kind of falls into like a similar lethargy as the orcs did after the Second War.
Right. I remember one thing we can talk about is how this mythology was basically represented in sort of Burning Crusade, because we find out by either I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly how he found out, but when all the pure blood Arakkoa died when Draenor exploded, we also found out that Rukhmar also died in that event because she only basically visits spires of Arak. And then the other gods, Seth, I don't know if we really hear about him that much in Burning Crusade other than his existence. I don't think we actually see him being present. But one really important detail I remember was how in Burning Crusade, Anzu was one of the bosses in Sefek Halls because the Sefek succeeded in corrupting him.
Yes.
And we see in Warlords of Draenor, part of the storyline of the Arakkoa mythology, so to say, was the Sephar trying to corrupt Anzu. We, the adventurers, help him, and then together with Anzu, we defeat Seth.
Yep. Yep. It definitely. It's yeah. Yeah. Seth is. I was trying to think back in BC. Seth is not there, but his, I guess the curse obviously is still there. And the Sethic, they exist, but they're not really like. I guess he must have died. Like he must have died with Rukhmar.
Which also seemed a bit odd to me how no pure blood Arakkoa would survive because they can fly, but the planet is exploding, we can't really blame them.
Yeah, I mean the Spires gets like totally pwned like in the explosion.
And one pretty much last minor thing that I noticed, which I noticed on myself, and then I found out, oh, that's kind of old news, but I still feel a bit proud of myself for noticing it. How in old Draenor, the area was called Talador, but in Burning Crusade it's called Terra Forest, and I realized that it's because after the Draenei were mostly exterminated and the orcs left for Azeroth, the outcasts settled there and renamed the place Terrakar. And then I read that, oh yeah, that Blizzard basically confirmed that quite a while ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. It really showed. I think I don't know. The Arakkoa seemed kind of unimportant in Burning Crusade, but now that we get like the full story, I guess I have like a better appreciation of what they were all doing. Because once again, a problem with Burning Crusade is I felt like its story was, if I mean, it wasn't non-existent. It was there. It was just really a big jumbled mess. And I guess this helped clarify kind of a big part of it.
I feel like in Burning Crusade you would sort of be thrown into the middle of the action with no real explanation as to what was going on, only a few cool things to see in the background, while Warlords of Draenor focused more on the uh, actual construction of a story of beginning, middle, and end, even if the process itself wasn't perfect.
Yeah, exactly. That's one. I mean, I criticize Warlords a lot, but one of the things I will give it credit for is, even though the story they tell, sometimes it might be stupid, but they, in at least in that Inspire's regard, they told it well, and I really liked it. The only thing that was missing, I think, was like a cinematic. I don't know what they could have done, but other than that, it was pretty perfect.
Did you get exalted with the Arakkoa outcasts in Warlords?
No, is there a cinematic?
It's not dramatic, but if you get exalted with the outcast, you get a little scene with Terok. You basically, the first time you go into Spires of Arak after you get exalted, you get an automated quest that's basically Rashad telling you, "Hero, you've done so much to us. Come to that one place where we're all at," and over there you see Terok talking to the gathered outcasts who are kneeling before him, except for Iskar, who sort of if you talk to him he says some mean things to you, and then Terok holds a little speech about how he owes us the player for everything, and how it's perhaps better that he was not resurrected as he was in Burning Crusade. He was resurrected in Burning Crusade in his corrupted form, and he mentions how in this little scene in Warlords of Draenor, he says how corruption had taken hold and how I am not an ideal leader, and I am glad that you have stopped me before I could take control of the Arakkoa.
Oh, that's super interesting. I'm gonna have to do that. I'm actually really close to Exalted. I'm like 500 reputation away. But see here, to go on to a non-story, quick little tangent. That's why I like daily quests because it gives me an incentive to get to the end rather than just having to go kill guys. I didn't even know that there was a scene at Exalted. That bums me out. I'm gonna go do that tonight after we're done.
I think you need to get to like 300 rep past Exalted, otherwise it doesn't trigger, if I'm not mistaken.
Ah, that's fine. I can grind out like 1,000. I'm only like through, what am I, 400 away from Exalted anyway.
Hmm. All right. Another other civilizations on Draenor would be the Draenei and the various orc clans, which I don't think we should talk about each orc clan in particular, other than mentioning them. So, which do you prefer we talk about?
I guess the Draenei. Leave the orcs for last.
Well, I would need a little bit more of your contribution when it comes to the Draenei, at least when it comes to Warlords of Draenor's story, because I still haven't gotten around to doing Shadow Moon Valley because real life stuff happened.
Sure. I'm just trying to think of what I didn't mention in the last video. Like, I mean, the Draenei civilization, obviously, it's much more robust still in Warlords.
Hmm.
They weren't taken out yet by the orcs. We come in and stop that as it's happening. Shatrath does fall, but then gets taken back. But we still can't go in there, and that's a different story for another day. But yeah, they seem to be chilling. They're pretty. I mean, they seem to be doing well until. But I guess there are festering problems, you know, with Sokrithar or what's his name before he's corrupted. Othar
Hmm.
is serving a legion behind the scenes. And it's interesting he does so because of out of this weird disillusionment that he has with Velen, because when and it all ties into the whole alternate universe thing. When Garrosh comes and rallies the orcs and makes the Iron Horde, Velen couldn't predict that because obviously that was from a different universe and the meddling of somebody else. So that kind of spurs Othar to be like, what good is a prophet who can't predict things? So then he turns to the Legion and he begins convincing other people that, you know, the Legion's the only way. And it's not until we get there that we realize that a whole bunch of Draenei have already been converted into the Sargerai,
Hmm.
and and Othar is their leader. He becomes Sokrithar, who we kill, but he comes back in the raid as a spirit inhabiting one of the constructs that the Draenei apparently have always had, that we don't see until Warlords.
That also, It's a little. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but that also kind of reminds me of how similar the Draenei are to the Protoss, because I remember the Protoss also have the Stalkers are basically, if I remember correctly, sort of Protoss souls or old Protoss soldiers or something like that.
Yeah, the same with the Dragoons from StarCraft 1. Were like that.
Hmm.
Like broken bodies of Protoss who still wanted to fight, but they couldn't actually fight.
Right. But going back on subject, I remember it being sort of advertised, so to say, back before Warlords of Draenor itself was released, that after that they said that there would be a big split in Draenei society, and they would be a lot more decentralized and a lot more infighting and bickering because the prophet could not predict this one disaster when he predicted all everything else. Does that happen outside of the Sargerai?
It does, not to the extent that I think we were led to believe. Like, there are 5 Exarchs who all are leading their, and I guess the Exarch is like I don't know how you want to call it, like a leader of a specific faction of Draenei.
Hmm.
Like, for example, there are the Rangari, who are like the Rangers, and they have their own Exarch. And then Othar was actually the Exarch of, I believe, the Shatari, who
Hmm.
were all dealing with Shatrath, which is why he kind of, when he betrays them, he goes and chills in Shatrath. You know, they had the artificers who were they weren't building new constructs. They were just kind of like maintaining the technology that they had still. And there are scenes where, but it all does revolve around the who's the betrayer storyline when it turns out to be Othar. There's like bickering between the Exarch, who's the artificer, and then the Rangari Exarch. and then the artificer guy, and I don't remember his name because he dies like right away, but he gets murdered, and everyone thinks it's the Rangari chick because they were arguing, and Othar's kind of like, hey, didn't we just see you fighting with that guy? And Maladar's there, and he's like, you're all stupid, but something is happening behind the scenes, and I need to figure out what it is. And in kind of an interesting, what I actually liked about that storyline is we saw Maladar kind of like batshit crazy in our universe, but in this one, he's the only one that's actually like doing stuff. Like he's the one trying to figure out who's behind the killing of the Exarch Artificer, where Akama's just kind of like, dudes, everyone needs to stop fighting. But Maladar seems to be the only one who's like, I'm going to figure this out. So there is infighting, but it's spurred on because of the murder.
That's definitely interesting. One thing that I think upsets is a bit of a strong word, but I'm gonna use it. One thing that upsets me in regards to both Warlords of Draenor and Burning Crusade is how we see mostly in Burning Crusade, but also in Warlords of Draenor, that Draenei settlements are pretty much all over the planet. There's Draenei settlements in Netherstorm, there's in Hellfire, past Tanan, Shadowmoon Valley, obviously, and Terador, Terrakar, because that's the hub of their civilization. But we also see Draenei settlements in Burning Crusade in the Grand, in like I said, they're spread out all over the continent, which seemed a little bit odd to me.
Yeah, especially it is kind of weird because in Warlords, it's less that. Like for example, in Nagrand, it's just the station that it seems like the station that you literally helped set up. Like it wasn't there before. Like you just set it up there to fight the Iron Horde. So yeah, I'm especially since in Burning Crusade, it's like after they've all been wiped out for the most part. So I guess I don't know. That's a interesting thing to notice that I hadn't thought about.
Uh, if I remember correctly, in Warlords of Draenor, there's also that one temple of where the Sargerai are in Tanan.
Oh yes, the Temple of, let me see because I have the game. Shannara, yeah. There doesn't seem to really be doing anything there. It's just more like, hey, Sargerai are here and they're bad. There's just like there's some of them are summoning demons. They're just doing evil shenanigans, which you would expect.
I think the temple actually existed in Burning Crusade, didn't it?
Oh, there was, I don't know if it was called Shinar, but it definitely, there were the ruins of that place were definitely in the exact same place in Hellfire Peninsula. Actually, I just leveled through that, and it's where you go and you gather artifacts, and it's where some of the broken have like settled down, but they're getting enslaved by like Doom Lords or something.
Right. That's also one of the things that I found really interesting in Burning Crusade when it comes to the Draenei, with the existence of the broken and the lost ones, and how the Draenei basically treated them as garbage, even though they were Draenei themselves. That's part of the reason why Unbroken is my favorite short story.
Yeah, it definitely was more of a I don't know, like an interesting twist on the Draenei, who were supposedly like, we're all holy, but fuck those corrupted brethren we have. Like it was Velen who was like, dudes, we have to really like love everybody. But definitely in Unbroken, but also is Unbroken. It's the story of what's his face, but Nabundo. Is that also the one where it's like flashbacking between present and the past with Anduin? Or am I thinking of a different one?
No, Anduin was really, really unimportant in Burning Crusade.
Right. I can't remember what part it's from, but there's the God, I just had a mind blank. Where was I going with this? I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know why I thought of Anduin for some reason. Because there's it's because in one story there's where Anduin's like trying to talk to Velen, and he's like so focused. I don't remember which short story that is. He goes to the Exodar, and then that's when Velen comes out after the end, where Anduin convinces him to be like, hey, we should love everyone. But some of the Draenei there are like, fuck everybody else. I thought it was interesting that in such like a holy group, there's some that were like, screw these people and screw the humans and screw the broken. And
yeah, it's Velen's short story. The part of the
that's what it is. A Prophet's Lesson, I think, is what it's called.
Yeah. I thought that was really, and it also sort of shows the. Uh, it's a reflection of real life. How extremely zealous groups tend to turn against people who do not share their beliefs, and I can say that because I'm religious myself. So yeah.
Right. Hey, I had no judgment here about saying there are some zealots in some particular groups. But yeah, I actually just looked it up, and it is called the Ruins of Shannara, which is interesting.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. Yeah. I don't know. What else about Draenei civilization did I not cover that we should cover? Could you think of anything?
I meant to ask you how basically in basically after in our universe after the Draenei are smashed, they take refuge mostly in Zangar Marsh, which didn't exist in Warlords of Draenor because Fel Magic and Draenor hadn't been smashed back then. Um, but I meant to ask you because I've never done the Alliance quests in Burning Crusade. Is there any sort of special interaction with the Draenei in Zangar Marsh, for example?
Um, they're pretty much there hiding, and you don't actually get to them right away. You start actually out at the Cenarian Expedition, I think it's what they're called.
Hmm.
You start out going to the Cenarian Expedition and helping them out, and you kind of, after you solve all those problems, you kind of are just sent there, and they're kind of just like hiding there. But there is a scene where they try to, I'm trying to see where the base actually was in Zangar Marsh. But there's like a base of Broken in Zangar Marsh who are like chilling there, like just being attacked by like bog creatures and stuff. It's the Feral Fen village in Zangar Marsh, and the Draenei of like I don't remember what Telmore. No. It's the base in Zangar Marsh. I don't remember what it's called.
Telmore? I think it's something with T.
Telredor is what it is. They're like, hey, which is interesting when we were just talking about how the pure ones were like, screw these guys. But they're like, hey, there's some of these Broken here, and we want them to join us because we want to help them out. And so then you go there, and the Broken are like, man, they were screwing us over this whole time, not helping us out, and now they want our help because they need assistance. They need the numbers because people are finding out that they're hiding there. Screw them. That's basically the end of the storyline. Like, the Broken are like, man, now they want our help after so long. Nope, sorry. And then that quest line kind of ends. It's kind of interesting to see how the Broken become, like, jaded because the Draenei are, like, forgetting them for so long, but since they need their help for something, they try to recruit them, and they're like, nope.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. In Zangar Marsh for the Horde, you just get a message, hey, our trolls set up an outpost over there, go and help them, and basically they are just being trolls. You help them with like voodoo stuff. At one point, there are two bases of trolls in Zangar Marsh, and at the bigger one, they captured a few gnomes and they're like torturing them or something, which is kind of funny. But other than that, yeah. Anything else about the Draenei? In Shadowmoon Valley, could you say what are the immediate ramifications of Velen's death?
The immediate ramifications of Velen's death seem to be none of the Exarchs step up and become like the unequivocal leader. They're kind of just running with the status quo of, hey, Akama's the leader of the Vindicators. I'm just gonna do the Vindicator stuff, and Exarch Naali is the Exarch of the Rangari. We're just gonna do Rangari stuff. It's not until Yrel becomes an Exarch where she's like, hey, we need to go together and do this, and that's why their base in Tanan Jungle is called Hand of the Prophet. It's all because Yrel finally managed to wrangle all of the different Exarchs to be like, we need to like work toward a common goal rather than just continue to sit there and defend ourselves. So pretty much like the cinematic where Velen like transfers the mark of the prophet or whatever that is from him to her. She basically takes over his position, even though she's still just called an Exarch. She's like the Exarch of the Exarchs, I guess.
I didn't mean to ask you what was she Exarch of.
We don't know. We never find out. They never tell us. She just becomes an Exarch. I guess you could say the implication is she takes what Othar's was, an Exarch of the Shatari, but she doesn't really focus on Shattrath at all. So I don't know.
Right. Um, One little contrast I remember with our universe, Draenei, was the only little tidbits of that we know of Draenei leadership in our universe was the prophet is always meditating, and so most of the decisions come to this triumvirate of the hand. I'm not sure how to say triumvirate in English, if to pronounce it though.
I think you got like triumvirate. Yeah, you basically got it.
Right. And there's these three Draenei who we meet a little bit of them while we're doing the starting quests as a Draenei, but other than that they're kind of not that important. But in the short story we find out that since the prophet is always meditating, they took over Man Draenei society, and I guess it makes sense because when the orcs came and Draenor exploded, the other exarchs are dead or corrupted. I'm trying to think. Sokrfar turns evil in our universe. Malodar turns evil. Akama is Akama. The other two?
Exar Kataru is the artificer, and he just dies. He gets betrayed by Othar. And then Nael is the Rangari one, and I guess she's just dead too.
Right. So yeah, and we also see in the short story how uh, the refugees that are on Azure who are constantly pressing the Draenei to let them in because the prophet somehow saw the cataclysm happen and Azure was safe. Um, and the triumvirate is confused about what to do with the situation, and then Anduin saves the day, yada yada yada. But my point was, I'm basically trying to say how one of the factors that helped really push the triumvirate to take action, or at least try to take action, was the arrival of Murad from Northrend, who basically says, while I was gone, you people have done nothing but run the Draenei society into the ground. I want to speak to the people in charge, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Which also reminds me, I meant to ask you about this quite a bit of a while ago, because I remember you were sort of complaining a little bit about Murad's role in the expansion. Um, I personally didn't have a problem with Murad being the main Draenei the Alliance interact with, which from our universe. Did you have a problem with that?
No, not at all. Actually, I think my complaint's been the same the whole time. I just wish they did more with him. Like, cause he just showed up and they made it seem like he was super important, and he like wasn't really to like the overall story. He's just the guy that actually did stuff and didn't just sit there. I just wish there was more of a payoff, because then when he just dies, it's just kind of like, well, that's it. You see his spirit one more time when Yrel is becoming an exarch. You have to fight him with her as like a test, but then that's it. He basically says, Yrel, you're ready, and goodbye. I'm going to the afterlife, and then he disappears.
I also feel like since I know there was the discarded content about how Murad was becoming more and more bloodthirsty during Warlords of Draenor, and him and Yrel's romance. I think, was it romance?
Yeah, it was definitely a romance at one point.
I think it fits really well with Murad's character that was established in the previous lore. Obviously, he was not a significant character by any means, but he was established as being a more hands-on approach Draenei who um, would take matters into his own hands, so to say, and who had a sort of hatred, I would say, a distaste for the orcs.
Yeah, it's because he was very battle hardened, not only from the fall of his people, but then being stuck in Northrend with the Scourge and having to survive that. It made sense why he would have been like that. I don't know why they got rid of it. I could possibly see the complaint about him being Yrel's romance, because they didn't want to like make a female Draenei hero and just have her be like, hey, this other guy's love interest. But I don't see a reason for them to remove him being like all bloodthirsty, because he still kind of is a little bit. He's always the one. I said this last time actually. He's always the one that's like giving quests to like go kill 50 million orcs when we need to take out their bombs and take out their tanks and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, what do you think, Murad? And he's like, I don't know, go kill orcs.
Yeah, I really think the romance with Irel would have, and more emphasis on Murad becoming more and more bloodthirsty would really have drastically improved the questing experience for the Alliance. And especially going back a little bit to the final line of 6.2 where Irel says, "A great man once told me, in the light we are one." I think it would have had a much greater impact if, like I said, he was Irel's love interest rather than a sort of mentor figure, but not really.
Well, Murad only says that because Velen said that. So that she's actually talking about Velen in that cinematic.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. I don't remember when, but Velen definitely does say that, and that's why when Murad says that, he's calling back to Velen.
Oh, I didn't know that. That was interesting.
Yeah. Because I also agree with you. Like, if it would have been just Murad, I would have been like, but Murad was, like, really not a great man. He just kind of died. He saved her, and I guess that's nice, but Velen was the dude. Yeah, it was definitely Velen who said, "In the light we are one," before he did.
Interesting. I stand corrected. What else?
You were talking about Velen and like visions and stuff, and how he's always meditating. He is kind of like that in Warlords of Draenor, although that stuff gets cut really quickly because he has to deal with the fact that the Iron Horde are on his doorstep. Whereas I guess just having refugees being up at the Exodar isn't as important. But there's a quest where you do see a vision. You go with Velen into the future to see a vision of Karabor being destroyed by the Dark Star. Like, that's how Velen like tries to figure out what to do. And so you see that, and then he's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to stop this. And I guess the implication is then, in the cinematic, he sacrifices himself to make sure the Dark Star doesn't become the Dark Star, or doesn't become part of the Iron Horde's arsenal.
Right. I've always found Velen's visions to be an interesting, if somewhat random plot device. I mean, it wasn't really his visions, but it sort of was his visions that led the Draenei to flee Argus. But then there's a scene in Rise of the Horde where Velen is captured by Durotan, and Durotan sort of begs him, "You are called the Prophet. Tell me of a way that we can stop this bloodshed between our people." And Velen sort of tells him, "It's in the hands of the orcs now. We can't really do anything." So, and we also see Velen's visions in his short story where I think he's constantly searching for more visions, and they aren't really popping up, and he's confused as to why. And then finally at the end, Anduin tells him why. I mean, or helps him realize why he is not seeing anything. So, Velen's visions, like I said, are a bit random sometimes.
It's definitely a very convenient plot device, I guess is what I would call it.
Oh, and he did have that one vision about the Blood Knights and the Sunworld, didn't he?
Yeah, where I guess he had like a vision kind of like Crassus did when he has it's like a vision accompanied by like a weird poem.
Yeah, I remember that. And speaking of which, I never understood Crassus' vision, because he's a red dragon, not a bronze dragon.
Yep.
But that's neither here nor there. And
I guess one last thing about the Draenei and Warlords is that, and something that I'm disappointed that there wasn't more of, but I'm glad that there was some of at least, was the fact that the Atamal crystals were addressed. The only one that seems to actually do anything is Leaf Shadow in Warlords, where it disguises the base in Talador from the Shadow Council. Because initially there were like strings and like text in like the alpha where like Velen was using some of the Optimal crystals to like defend Karabor, and like there was this whole like Shadowmoon Valley got really drastically changed like midway through development. like the zone initially started out at Karabor, it being invaded, and you stopping it, and then they changed it completely to Karabor's defense being the very last thing you do. But Velen's there, like there's like text and audio, but that's not voice because they didn't do it, where he's like using Atamal crystals to like defend Karabor, and then he uses one to like kill a bunch of orcs who are attacking. And I guess it's not totally in Velen's character to be like on the offensive, but I liked that the implication was when they announced it that Velen was supposed to be more proactive, but he ends up not being. He ends up being exactly the same kind of as ours. I guess he is proactive in the sense that he sacrifices his life to cleanse Kara, but I don't know. I think the Atamal crystals are a super interesting concept that they didn't like go anywhere with. Like they introduced it in Burning Crusade, and then they reinforced it in the novels and or vice versa, whatever order that happened in. And and in the Warlock Green Fire quest, they removed another reference to the Atamal crystal. It was initially going to be one of the things that a Warlock recovers and gives to the Council of Black Harvest, and they took that out. It's just a really interesting like group of artifacts that do cool things that I don't know why they don't like. They're like very visually stunning. Like one of them stealths a bunch of things, and one of them can blow shit up, and one of them can teleport people, and blah 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 blah. I just don't know why they didn't do more with it. I wish they would have, because they are in Warlords, or at least one is.
Interesting. If I remember correctly, in Rise of the Horde, I don't remember. Did Rise of the Horde come out before Crusade or after it?
I was just looking at it yesterday when I made a video that didn't come out because the file was corrupted about the movie. I believe Rise of the Horde was copyrighted in 2007, so that would be after, I think.
Well, then they were introduced in Burning Crusade and then expanded in the novels. But in Rise of the Horde, it's mentioned that yes, it's this big crystal that the Eredar revered that was actually a gift from the Narru that then splits into the 7 Atamal crystals, and then of the Atamal crystals, only 3 are described. One that Leaf Shadow, which hides Telmor, or I think it's called Telmor, and then 2 others which respectively enhance a warrior's physical strength and enhance his spellcaster's clarity, magic, etc. But the other 4 are not really mentioned at all. Actually, there is one that is mentioned by Velen, which he always carries on his person, which it is mentioned that this Atamal crystal would never leave him or something like that. But the other 3 are said only, they're helping Draenei society in other ways.
Yeah, I actually was just looking them up, and the one you were first talking about was the Heart of Fury. That's the one that increases someone's strength. The one that Velen supposedly always had was the Brilliant Star. It calms the carrier's emotions, purifying them, allowing them to clarity in their decisions. Especially this affects spellcasters, allowing manipulation of arcane and elemental magics that rarely are paralleled elsewhere.
I think we're talking about 2 different ones because...
yeah, you're right. Actually, this one was taken from Velen, and they said it was used... This was useful in the Orcs' destruction of the Draenei's forces, and they don't know where it is now.
Right. If I remember correctly, in Burning Crusade, I think it was actually Sokrafar that was looking for Atamal crystals, or at least a subordinate of Sokrafar.
It was. The one he was looking for was Spirit Song. And I think you used that to actually get into one of the raids. You give it to a doll in Shattrath, and then he's like, "Hey, now go kill this dude. This will get you into the Architraz, the dungeon." That's where you use it.
That's definitely interesting.
And then let's see, Leaf Shadow we talked about. There was one called Eye of the Storm, and this was the one that was removed from the Warlock quest chain. It was going to be initially that Illidan had this, and that you recover it when you do the Green Fire quest in Mists of Pandaria. But they took it out because, I don't know, you were going to give it to Wrathion, which would have been interesting.
I think that after Medan, Blizzard is kind of afraid of building up stuff without having any idea of how it will end up.
Yeah, that's true. But I think they did. I think they they have a clear direction with Rathian compared to Medan, who was just kind of gone now, and Atiesh is in Khadgar's possession again, and I don't know what's happening with him.
Yeah. One little fun tidbit I remember was on the Hearthstone Twitter. They sometimes do a little thing where they role play as the characters, and they did a thing to advertise for Medivh, which is a hero they're selling. And one of the questions that people asked, quote unquote, Medivh was, "Why does Khadgar have your staff?" And the answer was, Khadgar was my apprentice. I can't think of no one better there yet. Completely ignoring Medan.
I guess they're changing their mind from Kozak, who said he was determined to make Medan cool.
Uh, but yeah, that's the Draenei. Is there anything else to add on them?
I think that's it. At the end, Yrel seems to pretty much be like the leader,
Hmm.
and she wants to rebuild Draenor, so she doesn't come back with us, which makes me sad.
Hmm. It definitely would have been interesting to see Yrel or the Draenei interact with the Narru. Do they interact with the Narru? Outside of course, the black or dark star.
No, actually, nope, because the Naru aren't there. I don't think, right? They don't arrive. Like they don't come to Draenor. It's just Kara who gets cleansed and then
Hmm.
protects Karabor.
Well, yeah, you're actually right, but in our universe, the Draenei crashed the Exodar. There was only the Narru, and the Exodar was sort of left there while the Draenei settled, and the shenanigans with the orcs happened. But and then after the Draenei became refugees, the Narru came with Tempest Keep to take the Draenei away, and the Blood Elves and all that. So yeah, it's actually correct that the Nardu would not be more involved in Warlords of Draenor. Although,
Yeah, there is the one in Elshagan though that Cho'Gall corrupts.
right. Although now that I think about it, since Velen purifies the Dark Star and it transforms into a Naru, I think it would have been interesting to see maybe Irel interact with that Naru, or have that Naru say, "I'm gonna contact my other Naru brethren," or something like that.
Yeah, there were actually a ton of like theory crafting on what was going to happen after 6.0. Some people thought like, hey, Velen sacrificed himself and he was like the champion of the Naru basically, and they're going to show up like the Shatar are going to show up in Draenor and try and do stuff. And there was also a pretty popular theory that hey, when Velen cleansed Kara, he was going to like combine with her and be part of the Naru, and like he would be part of Kara that could like do stuff, but they didn't really go anywhere with it. And the Naru are interesting because we still don't know like anything about them. I want them to be more involved.
I definitely get what you mean. Yeah, I also kind of participated in theories back in like Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria about the Naru. I sort of came up with a theory that they're agents of the Titans, and I don't know, it was complicated.
Well, I could definitely see that. But there's the connection of the light and how the Titan, a lot of the Titan, at least races that eventually become like humans and dwarves and gnomes, they happen to for some reason all eventually gravitate toward the light for some reason.
Right.
But I think that's literally everything about the Draenei.
Yep. So now plans, right?
Sure. Yes.
Like I said, I don't think we should talk about every single one in particular, because there are very few hours left in the day.
Right.
Um, but I like how Warlords of Draenor sort of work to further individualize the clans, even if some of the information was contradictory to previous lore. For example, one little bit that kind of irked me when Warlords of Draenor was first announced was how in previous lore, Gorem and the War Song were renowned as basically infantrymen, while in Warlords of Draenor they're basically Mongols.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I found it interesting how the Black Rocks in our universe they are the I think the most numerous clan, and in this universe we see those numbers dedicated to becoming basically the front line of the Iron Horde. All of those armored legionnaire looking guys are Blackrock orcs, and that's definitely interesting. Uh, the Shadow Moons and the Dark Star and the Void Magics are probably one of the most radical departures.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of fits into the whole idea of them being seers. It's just they expanded it to be like, hey, the way they do that is by looking to the stars, which it definitely is different. But I don't know. I think I guess while it's different, it kind of made sense to me at least.
Right. It also kind of makes sense that there would be different shades and types of shamanism instead of the sort of universal one that we saw in Rise of the Horde.
Yes, I actually really like the blood shamanism of the Bleeding Hollow in this expansion.
It, it kind of reminded me of troll voodoo magic and the berserkers. There's actually even a line on a daily quest that the Vojan's shadow hunters give you, where they have you collect bleeding hollow like needles or something like that, where they say, go collect these needles for me, man. They be like voodoo, only they hurt more.
Nice.
uh, Other than that, the bleeding hollow, I mentioned it in the previous podcast, but I found it a bit odd how some of the clans were sort of excluded, forgotten, like the Dragon Maw or the Lightning's Blade or the Bone Chewers or other clans like that.
Yeah, I guess the Dragon Maw makes sense because they made a big fuss about. I remember that one BlizzCon, Metzen was really upset that someone pointed out that there were no dragons on Draenor, so why would there be Dragon Maw clan?
Right. Um, the Frost Wolves are kind of unchanged from their previous portrayal, other than their migrations from Frostfire to Nagrand. That was not in the previous lore. In Rise of the Horde, all the scenes pretty much take place in Nagrand.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the stereotypical good orcs, I guess if you want to call them.
Right. Even though Rise of the Horde didn't really mention the existence of Frostfire Ridge and did mention the existence of Blade's Edge Mountains.
Shh, don't you remember different blades of grass or something?
I still have no idea how Frostfire Ridge and Gorgon merged to form Blade's Edge Mountains, because I've been to Blade's Edge Mountains lately on my character and they look almost nothing alike.
Yeah, you're right.
Uh, the Frost Wolves, the Thunderlords. I found the little spin on their story interesting about how they're hunters and how they sort of contrast with the Frost Wolves, because um, the Thunderlords always hunt in packs, while the Frost Wolves are sort of more focused on family and survival of the group. Also, you get what I mean.
Yeah, there's also that scene when you're fighting Fenris at the very end of Frostfire where it really exemplifies the difference where Fenris is talking about like dominating the animals that fight with him, like mentally and physically dominating them, while Duratan's like, no, we gotta be friends with our wolf companions.
Right. Um, and it also pretty much added story where there was almost, because in the previous lore, the Thunderlord clan were just they were mentioned in the Warcraft 2 manual as being one of the only clans to still have Wolf Riders when Orgrim Doomhammer disbanded them, because the Wolf Riders were pretty much agents of the Shadow Council.
Yeah.
Um, and there was, of course, Fenris Wolf Brother in the Beyond the Dark Portal novel, who sort of served as a contrast to Tagar Spinebreaker, who was a stupid maniac, while Fenris was an intelligent orc.
Right.
Uh, what other clans are there? The Shadow Council is still the Shadow Council.
What are they called? The Shattered Hand.
Oh, right, the Shattered Hand. Uh, the previous lore was basically they're maniacs who replaced one of their hands, and they are pretty much most of the rogues that you would see in the Horde or in the Fell Horde are members of the Shattered Hand, but we didn't have any other lore on them. And now we know that they are former gladiators and slaves who Kargath freed.
They're still pretty crazy,
Yep.
but at least they have a little bit more of an origin as to why they're cutting their arms off and stuff.
Even though it's still a bit of a weird origin.
Right. I do like that they are just an amalgamation of a bunch of clanless orcs rather than just being a clan themselves.
Hmm. And I also found it interesting how the Shattered Hand have gray skin instead of brown skin. Which, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing. I don't know why they didn't really explain that, but it was I guess just a way to distinguish them.
I think it sort of ties in how before Warlords of Draenor in our universe, you would see the Blackrock orcs in Blackrock Mountain have, instead of green skin, they would have sort of greenish gray skin, and the Dragonmaw orcs would also have a darker shade of gray skin, which I guess is sort of confirmation to the theory. The longer you the longer an orc spends inside the mountain, the grayer their skin becomes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Uh,
right. I also
uh,
think we're getting some internet issues going on right now.
yep, we are. Can you still hear me?
Yes, it's better now.
Uh, right. Oh, did you hear everything I said?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's confirmation that the longer you are connected with the fell, I guess you stay greener.
Oh, that's not. Damn you,
I thought
internet.
that's what you said.
Damn you,
Yeah,
internet. Damn you. Well, it seems kind of resolved on my end. Basically, I was saying that it's kind of confirmation about how the longer you stay inside a mountain or an enclosed space, the grayer the skin of an orc becomes. Because
oh, right.
the Dragon Maw were in Grim Batol, the Black Rocks were in Blackrock Mountain, as well as their original homeland in Gorgrond, and now the Shattered Hand, who stayed were pretty much done stayed in dungeons.
Yeah, and they also were in like the forested spires when we see them, which is like really dark.
Right, the spires in the ogre mines, the ogre arenas, stuff like that. Uh, the the wars, the story of the Warsong clan is pretty much entirely tied to the story of their leaders. Because outside of what I mentioned before about how in previous lore they were infantrymen and now they're basically kind of Mongols, their entire story is dependent on who leads them.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of in a weird, different but similar way to the Bleeding Hollow, where their chieftain dictates how they act. Even I guess the Bleeding Hollow do have a through line where they're just crazy and they pluck their eyeballs out, but
Right. Also, in previous lore, we didn't really have that much information on the Bleeding Hollow. We had quite a bit of information on Kil'jaeden and how his clan fared during the war, but we didn't really have that much information about what his clan was about, other than the fact that they were once one of the most numerous clans in the Horde, but after the Second War, they dwindled to almost nothing.
right. Yeah. 'Cause they made it seem like in the original lore, Kilrog Deadeye was called Kilrog Deadeye because one of his eyes was gone. He was the one that was it was like more specific to him that he did that.
I'm also kind of disappointed that we didn't see in Warlords, we didn't see Kilrog's son, which we meet in Garar among the Magar.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't realize that. You're right.
Uh,
Let's see. What clans? The Laughing Skull are like kind of involved in Warlords. Like, I mean, they're in Gorgrond and they're crazy, like they were described as crazy being before. But there's not a lot of them, which is weird. There's like very, very few.
right. Well, their village did get kind of annihilated. Uh, but in previous lore, I think I don't think they were really this. Actually, I think yes, they were described as kind of crazy, but their most important characteristic was that they were led by an ogre at the time, which they are not in Warlords of Draenor, Mogor the Ogre, and
Oh, good old Mogor the Ogre. Oh, Blizzard, and you're rhyming.
right, and how they were one of the few clans who betrayed Ner'zhul and worked together with the Alliance expedition in Warlords of Beyond the Dark Portal.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting. I remember reading that and being like, whoa, I didn't know that was a thing. That was cool.
Well, it happened in Warcraft 2, but they kind of retconned it in the Beyond the Dark Portal novel, where in Beyond the Dark Portal it doesn't happen at all, but in the final scene where Khadgar and all the others are facing Ner'zhul and Ner'zhul escapes, one of Ner'zhul's followers is struck down by him, and he basically tells the Alliance, Ner'zhul forced my clan, the Laughing Skull, to join him, but now fuck him. Go have the Book of Medivh. I have it on me. You can have it.
Right.
I have it on me. You can have it.
Right.
Uh,
Let's see. We said bleeding. The Storm Reavers really are not a thing because it wasn't necessary. I guess it was just a Shadow Council.
yeah. I think I remember back at BlizzCon the Storm Reavers did exist until like someone pointed out that they did and they removed them. If I remember
Let's see.
correctly.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at the trivia page for the Storm Reaver clan. In the Alpha, the Storm Reaver clan was Gul'dan's main force, contradicting the statement that Gul'dan made it after the Orcs reached Azeroth. This error was corrected and they were removed.
Yeah, because in Azeroth the Storm Reavers were created only after the Shadow Council was destroyed by Doomhammer as basically we're not the Shadow Council anymore. We're just another clan that in service to our great war chief. Yep, nothing suspicious about
We're
it.
totally not the Shadow Council. Wink, wink. We're gonna be over here doing shadowy bad magic. Don't mind us.
That's also another thing that I found really interesting about the Second War, Tides of Darkness, about how yes, the Gul'dan and the Storm Reavers created the original Death Knights, but they were not loyal to Gul'dan. They were loyal to the Horde, and they actually fought against Gul'dan.
I always looked at that, and I guess there's no confirmation this is true, but I guess that I always looked at it as they were looking out for their own self-interest, and I guess they could see at that point that when they were ordered to fight Gul'dan, that Gul'dan was the losing side at that point. So they were just kind of like, hey, in an effort to survive, we're just going to be like, yeah, we're with you, Grom. Or Grim.
Right. I also found it kind of interesting that in the Beyond the Dark Portal novel, Terran Gorfind is the one who sort of tells Ner'zhul to stop being a wimp and actually do something for the Horde.
Yeah, true. And in this one, in Warlords, he's just like, I hate everyone, I want souls. And then he comes back as a giant, disgusting monster as the boss in 6.2.
Yep.
I think the only one we haven't mentioned are the Burning Blade clan.
Oh, that's right. You're right. We actually did the lore facts on them about the Burning Clay Devil and how
Yep.
they were portrayed in the previous lore and how they are now. Basically,
So go watch that.
I'll give it a short rundown. We didn't really know that much in the previous lore. We thought the RPG book said that they were a collection of maniacs, but then Burning Crusade and Warlords of Draenor said, "Oh no, they're actually a real legit clan, and they just happen to like swords a lot and fire."
That's true.
And I can't really think of any other clan that we have Yeah.
Yeah, I think I actually really like the idea of the Burning Blade clan, and I really liked the potential of Azuka Blade Fury, but they just killed her off like right away. I was sad.
Yep, indeed. And one of the recorders has stopped working.
Hmm,
Luckily, it was not the primary one, so you listeners should not have any problem. Hopefully, who knows?
that's good. I think we are close to wrapping up anyway, right? Is there anything else we didn't discuss?
I think we talked about pretty much everything we could. Uh, I mean, we talked about the various civilizations on Draenor. I'm trying to think if we missed any. Uh, I mean, I guess the cat people whose name I can't really remember, they exist and are not really relevant. Uh,
The Saberon, who are there and they fight everybody. The end.
hmm. Well, we can see why they got exterminated. Uh,
Right.
I guess we could have expanded a little bit on the Magnaron and the sort of ogres between the ogres and the Magnaron. Uh, fun little tidbit that I found out while I don't remember how I found it out, but apparently the orc race started out as slaves to the ogres.
Hmm. Interesting.
So maybe I don't know. The ogres are, oh, the orcs are somehow related to it by are somehow related to the ogres by ancestry. We don't really know that. The whole lineage with the ogres is also kind of confusing because warlords of the North conveniently forgot about the ogre lords, which were, yeah.
Yeah, don't think about it. Blade the grass.
And I think we should kind of continue wrapping it up before my internet completely gives out and I stop hearing you completely. So,
Right.
yeah, that was our impressions are on 6.2 on basically what I'm gonna call Civilization Draenor and on the Warcraft movie. So, thank you, Necroxis, for once again joining me, or I guess once again doing this thing together, however you would want to call it.
Sure thing. It was fun.
And yeah, the next episode will be on Necro's channel, so see all of you then.
Yep. Bye.